agency memo says, we have no answers. Agency memo says, agency memo says, agency memo says, agency memo says, agency memo says,
technical difficulties there. I went with it though. It was alright. I got this. Hope y'all are having a good day. It's been a while, huh? YouTube. What am I doing there? Hey Jim, Ted Tom, say. It's just new stuff doesn't do well at all over on Twitch. I might as well not even be streaming. So I figured this is kind of interesting that a lot of Americans probably aren't going to see. So I'm going to go with it. Alright. It's been on for a while, that's why I haven't paused, but it's happening right now still. Been busy. Glad you've been busy, man.
Glory to Ukraine.
What's that doing there? Oh, it's the look. Not working.
Your Excellency, Prime Minister, Président Gagné, party leaders, honorable parliamentarians, distinguished guests, bienvenue à cet événement
Welcome to this extraordinary event,
La deuxième
the
adresse
second
conjointe
joint address
au
to
Parlement
Parliament
de Son Excellence
by His
Monsieur Vladimir
Excellency
Zelensky,
Volodymyr
Président de
Zelensky,
l'Ukraine.
President of Ukraine.
On behalf of my colleagues, we are honored for your visit. As we come together under one roof, we take a moment to celebrate the friendship and shared values of our countries. We celebrate our people and the history of cooperation between Canada and Ukraine. And we celebrate solidarity. Permettez-moi maintenant d'inviter
Allow
le
me
très
to now
honorable
invite the Right
Premier
Honorable
ministre
Prime
de
Minister
prendre la
to
parole.
take the floor.
Mr. Speaker, parliamentarians, honored guests, friends, we gather today at a pivotal point in history. This is a time of incredible uncertainty. Attacks upon the rules-based international order threaten to upend the peace and prosperity that have been the bedrock of Canada's success. This is a challenge on a generational scale, a challenge that history will judge us on. A challenge we must confront with lion-hearted courage, and the world can find no better inspiration than our friend here with us in our house today, President Volodymyr Zelensky, and his wife, the First Lady of Ukraine, Olena Zelenska. One year, 6 months, and 29 days ago, Vladimir Putin launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine unleashing a campaign of violence and brutality that has left countless dead and forced millions to flee. But for 1 year, 6 months, and 29 days, the people of Ukraine have defended their homes, their language, and their freedom to choose their own future. They have fought back with a courage that has inspired the world, and they have been led by President Zelenskyy, a great champion of democracy. Monsieur le Président Zelenskyy,
President Zelensky,
en mars de l'année
in March
dernière,
of last year,
vous vous êtes adressé
you
à notre
addressed
Parlement
our parliament
virtuellement.
virtually.
En juin de cette
June of
année, je
this
me suis
year,
adressé
I
à
addressed
votre
your
Parlement
parliament
à Kiev,
in Kiev,
la Verkhovna
Verkhovna
Rada,
Rada,
où j'ai été
where I was
touché
touched
de
to
voir
see
autant de
so
drapeaux
many
canadiens
Canadian
dans la
flags
Chambre.
in the chamber.
Aujourd'hui,
Today,
vous êtes en
You
mesure
are
d'être
able to
ici
be
en
here in
personne
person
pour parler du
to
combat
speak
pour
about the
votre
fight for
démocratie
your
et votre
democracy and
liberté.
your freedom.
Et vous le faites
And you do it
pour nous
to
rappeler
remind us
que chez vous,
that in your
la
country,
Russie poursuit
Russia
son assaut,
continues its
les
assault,
Ukrainiens
and Ukrainians are
sacrifient
sacrificing
leur vie.
their lives.
Monsieur le Président Zelenskyy,
President
nous
Zelensky,
parlons
we
régulièrement.
speak regularly.
On a parlé de
We've
ce qui se
spoken
passe à
about
la
what is
centrale
happening
nucléaire
at
de
the
Zaporizhia
Zaporizhia
et de la
nuclear power
destruction
station
écologique
and the
provoquée par
environmental
les tactiques de
destruction
la Russie.
caused by Russia's tactics.
On a parlé
We've
du bilan
spoken
humain,
of the human toll,
des enfants enlevés
children kidnapped,
et des gens à qui
and
on
people
apprend la
who are being
haine.
taught to hate.
I've seen Putin's destructive evil firsthand during my visits to Ukraine since the war began. I saw it in the bombed-out neighborhoods, in the bridges reduced to twisted steel, in the abandoned homes. I also saw it in the faces of your citizens. They walked down the street, sat in cafes, daily life seemingly persisting, but with everyone I spoke to, I saw in the backs of their eyes the weight of this war, the fear for their fellow Ukrainians on the front lines, the anxiety that another air raid siren would go off at any moment, the loss of a loved one. The toll of this war on the mental health and well-being of Ukrainians is immeasurable. I know, First Lady Zelenskyy, you are dedicated to the work to address this. So today we are providing funding to support mental health care in Ukraine as we continue to applaud your tremendous leadership in these difficult times. When rules-based orders crumble, so much is lost. One example of how this breakdown manifests is the horrifying, preventable hardship as Russia blocks grain exports, worsening hunger and starvation among the world's most vulnerable people. President Zelenskyy, you and the Ukrainian people are holding the rules-based order in the balance. You are on the front lines, not just of the fight for Ukraine, but in the fight for the kind of future we are all going to be living in. Les règles
Rules
comptent.
matter.
Au lendemain de la Deuxième
Second
Guerre
World
mondiale,
War,
le conflit
the
le plus
bloodiest
sanglant et le meurtrier
and
que
deadliest
l'humanité ait
conflict
jamais connu,
humanity has
les
ever
nations
known,
du monde entier
the whole
ont
world's
convenu
nations
d'un ensemble
agreed
commun
on a common
de
set
principes et de règles
of rules and
pour
principles
établir la paix.
to reestablish peace.
Depuis 3/4 de
For
siècle,
3/4
ces
of a
règles ont
century,
permis
these
une
rules
prospérité
have allowed
historique.
historic
Elles
prosperity.
ont favorisé le
They have
commerce,
fostered trade,
donné aux citoyens
given
la confiance
citizens the
nécessaire pour
necessary
investir
confidence
dans
to
leur
invest
avenir
in their future
et aider
and
des
helped
millions de
millions of
personnes
people
à sortir de la
escape
pauvreté.
poverty.
Il n'y a pas un
There
endroit
isn't a single
qui n'ait
place
pas
that
connu la
hasn't known
prospérité
prosperity
grâce à
thanks
la paix.
to peace.
But what Putin has done is a break with civilization. It is a violation of our common humanity. It is an attempt to disassemble the rules-based order that protects our freedom. It is a move to weaken democracy and assert autocracy. Putin governs with deception, violence, and repression. He imprisons his own people and stirs up ugly sentiments of xenophobia and racism. But his imperial delusions in Ukraine have been met with a fierce defense. A defense that is not just strong because of the support from friends around the world, but because those who fight for their freedom will always fight with their whole hearts. C'est pourquoi on doit
That
tous
is
se
why
battre
we must all
par tous les
fight
moyens
by
possibles.
all possible means.
On doit s'élever
We must
haut et
speak
fort
out loud and
contre les
clear
violations de la
against
souveraineté
violations of
nationale
national
et les
sovereignty
affronts
and
au
affronts
droit
to
international.
international law.
Les violations de
Violations
l'ordre
to the
fondées sur des règles
rules-based
doivent
international order
être
must be
dénoncées
denounced,
et les transgresseurs
must be held
doivent être tenus
responsible for their
responsables
actions.
de leurs actes. Ça a toujours été
That
la
has always
position
been our
de notre
government's
gouvernement.
position.
C'est pourquoi,
That
sans
is why,
exception,
without exception,
on s'oppose
we
aux
oppose
États autoritaires
authoritarian
et on se
states,
tient aux côtés
and
de
we
ceux qui
stand by
défendent
those who
le droit
defend
international,
international law,
les droits universels de la
universal human
personne
rights,
et la
and the
capacité
ability
de
of
tous
all
les peuples
peoples
à
to
décider de
decide
leur
on
propre
their own
avenir.
future.
C'est pourquoi on est
That is
resté
why
fidèle
we
à nos
remained
principes
faithful to our
quand Michael
principles
Kovrig
when
et
Michael
Michael
Kovrig and
Spavor
Michael
ont été
Spavor
détenus
were arbitrarily
arbitrairement par la
detained
Chine.
by China.
There are countries that are bending or breaking the rules, political forces that are pandering to demagoguery. And we are all experiencing a rise of disinformation, some state-sponsored, some politically motivated, that twists facts and refuses evidence and science. In this era of uncertainty and of resurgent great power competition, rules are what will protect us. And it's not enough for them to just be written down somewhere. We must advocate for them, stand up for them, and live by them. History will judge us on how we defend democratic values. And Ukraine is at the tip of the spear in this great challenge of the 21st century. That's why Canada and Canadians are there for Ukraine and why we stand so unequivocally against Russia. It's why people across Canada have welcomed with open arms over 175,000 Ukrainians, some of whom are here with us today.
By the way, did y'all hear about how he's not going to have an election because he thinks it'll be too hard on the people? The Ukrainian president
There are those here who've come
next
from
year.
Bucha and
That's a
Kharkiv.
democratic
They are part of a group
country,
of
I
Ukrainian
guess.
scientists who found safety in Canada, and their expertise in the clean economy is helping the world unwind its dependence on the fossil fuels weaponized by despots like Putin. We also have leaders from the Ukrainian-Canadian community like Orisia and others. They come from the Canadian prairies, where so many Ukrainian immigrants have settled for over a century, and they have led the charge in helping their communities welcome refugees fleeing Putin's bombs, everything from collecting clothing donations to helping them find homes. We're also joined by Agnes and Susan, who lost their brother Anthony, a humanitarian volunteer, just 12 days ago. He was killed in a Russian strike while trying to help civilians in Donetsk Oblast, innocent people who are being brutalized by the Kremlin's unprovoked aggression. Today, our gallery is filled with Ukrainians who've come to show their support and gratitude for you, Volodymyr, but I think we all need to take a moment to thank them for their bravery, their generosity, and their solidarity with the values of democracy. Monsieur le Président
President
Zelensky,
Zelensky,
j'ai indiqué
I have
clairement que
clearly
notre
said
gouvernement
that our
va se
government
tenir à vos
will
côtés
stand by you
aussi
for
longtemps
as
qu'il le
long
faudra.
as it takes.
Le Canada a fourni
Canada
près
has
de 9
provided
milliards de
nearly
dollars
$9
en
billion
soutien militaire,
in military,
financier
financial,
et
and
humanitaire à
humanitarian
l'Ukraine depuis
support
que
to
Poutine
Ukraine
a
since
commencé
Putin
sa guerre
began his
d'agression.
war of aggression.
Today, we are making a longer-term, multi-year commitment that provides predictable, steady support to Ukraine. It will include $650 million over 3 years for 50 armored vehicles, including medical evacuation vehicles that will be built by Canadian workers in London, Ontario.
Patty, what do you think about that?
We'll also send F-16 trainers for pilots and for maintenance so Ukrainians are able to maximize their use of donated fighter jets.
On va continuer de travailler avec
We
nos
will
partenaires,
continue
y
to work with our
compris au sein
partners,
de l'OTAN,
including within
pour
NATO,
apporter un
to
soutien
provide
constant.
unwavering support,
Et on va continuer
and
de
we will
fournir un
continue to
soutien
provide
économique
economic
à l'Ukraine
support to
au
Ukraine
cours de la prochaine
over the
année
next year,
pour qu'elle reste un
so that
pays
it remains
démocratique, fort,
a strong,
dynamique et
dynamic,
prospère.
and prosperous democratic country.
Mais notre plus grand espoir,
But our greatest hope
c'est que vous n'ayez
is
plus
that you
besoin de
won't
soutien
need
militaire ou
military or
financier pendant
financial
longtemps,
support for long,
que la paix
and that peace
revienne bientôt.
returns soon.
Mais ce ne peut pas
But
être
it cannot
une
be
fausse
a
paix
false
fondée
peace
sur un compromis
based on a
imposé
compromise
par
imposed
l'agresseur.
by the aggressor.
Pour une paix
For a lasting
durable,
peace,
on doit
we
s'opposer à
must
Poutine
oppose
et
Putin
rejeter
and
ses
reject his
tentatives de nous
attempts
ramener à
to
une
bring us
époque
back to a
où
time
la force
when might
fait la loi.
made right.
Une paix
A
durable
lasting
doit
peace
clairement
must
établir
clearly
que les frontières
establish
se doivent
that
être
borders must be
respectées,
respected
peu importe la taille de
regardless
l'armée
of
du
the
voisin.
size of the neighboring army.
Cette paix doit
This
mener au
peace
rétablissement du
must
droit des
restore the right
Ukrainiens
of
de
Ukrainians to
déterminer
determine
leur propre
their
avenir.
own future.
Canada stands with the principles of Ukraine's peace formula. We believe that peace must respect the UN Charter, be based in international law, and preserve Ukraine's territorial integrity. This is the peace we must fight for, and that is what Ukraine has done for 1 year, 6 months, and 29 days. Putin thought he'd make quick work of marching on Kyiv. Putin thought President Zelenskyy would cave in the face of personal peril. But, sir, you have not. You have galvanized the world. You have made the bonds between democratic allies and friends stronger than ever. Volodymyr, Olena, to see you here today in this chamber, to see so many proud and courageous Ukrainians here today, after everything you have all endured, is a testament to the commitment of your country and the strength of your fight. Monsieur le Président Zelenskyy,
President
Vous avez
Zelenskyy,
montré au
you have
reste du
shown
monde
the
en
rest
quoi
of the world
consiste un
true
véritable
leadership,
leadership, même dans les
even
moments
in
les
the
plus
most
difficiles.
difficult moments.
Vous vous battez
You
avec un
fight with
sentiment
a sense of
d'espoir
hope,
et vous êtes
and you are
dévoué à la
dedicated to the
sécurité
security
et au
and
progrès de votre
progress of your
population.
people.
in times like this, the world needs leaders who understand that true strength is not about wielding power, but about empowering others. True strength is not about crushing your opponent with brute force and lies. It's about respecting the humanity and the dignity of everyone. It's about governing from a basis of truth and compassion. In times of crisis, holding fast to positive values like this can be a lot harder than resorting to fear and resentment, but it is well worth it. When the history books are written, we know what they will say of you. That you were among those who stood up for their principles, no matter how hard. Among those who stood up to bullies. Among those who protected the less fortunate. Among those who unified people in the face of fear. Among those who defended the rules and upheld the law. Among those who put justice, hope, and freedom above all else.
His wife's a little
We know
rude.
that democracy is one of the greatest expressions of freedom. It gives us the right to have a voice, to choose our own future, to be protected by a system with justice and accountability. But democracy does not happen by accident, and it will not continue without effort. We must defend it and strengthen it with all that we have.
Not his wife.
Volodymyr, my friend, you have a unique understanding of this. You
Zelenskyy.
stare down Putin every single day, and we will be with you and all heroes
Yeah,
of
resting
this
bitch
courageous
face.
fight for as long as it takes. Slava Ukraini!
Glory to Ukraine.
Hey, Roosevelt's wife didn't even look like that. And you remember what she looked like?
Volodymyr Zelenskyy of Ukraine to address
They were at war, right?
this.
Yeah, and she was definitely, she would go visit the troops, man, all happy and looked like she was like as sexy as she could be for who she was, you know? All smiles. But she, like, I don't know. Feels like she smiles only when people are looking. His wife.
Thank you so much. Героям слава. Героям слава.
Glory to heroes.
Thank you so much. Dear ladies and gentlemen, Canada. Before I start, I just want to remind one thing. This thing is very important to understand both Ukraine and Canada. And what we are up to, what we need to do, and to do together. 1983, the city of Edmonton. Its history is closely linked to the destiny of Ukraine and Ukrainian Canadian community. That here in Edmonton, the first monument to the victims of Holodomor was built in the world. Thank you so much.
Dude, Canada loves to clap.
Thank you. Was built to remember the genocide against
pleasant.
the Ukrainian people. The genocide ordered and perpetrated by Moscow. The first ever Holodomor monument in the world. At that time, Ukraine didn't yet have memorials commemorating the victims of genocide of Ukrainians because Ukraine was under Moscow's control back then. This fall will mark the 40th anniversary in that first and very important commemoration of the victims of Holodomor. A lot has changed since then. Ukraine gained independence. Ukraine is restoring its own historic memory. Dozens of other countries, their parliaments, their governments have already recognized Holodomor as the genocide of the Ukrainian people. And this year,
Never heard of it.
this year alone, there have been 11 of such recognitions. And I'm sure that the world, the whole world, will recognize the truth about Holodomor. But there is something that has not changed either in 40 years since the monument in Edmonton was built or in 90 years since the Holodomor. Moscow now, as always, is bent on controlling Ukraine and makes use of all available means to do that, including genocide. It is genocide what Russian occupiers are doing to Ukraine. And when we want to win, when we call on the world to support us, it is not just about an ordinary conflict. It is about saving lives of millions of people. Literally, physical salvation. Ordinary women and men, children,
our families, whole communities, entire cities. Russia's destruction of Mariupol, of Volnovakha, or Bakhmut, or any other city or village in Ukraine must not go unpunished. Life and justice must prevail everywhere in Ukraine and for all Ukrainians. This Russian aggression must end with our victory. Yes. Yes. So that Russia will never bring back genocide to Ukraine and will never ever try to do so. Moscow must lose once and for all, and it will lose. Dear speakers, the whole Parliament of Canada, dear Justin, Mr. Prime Minister, ladies and gentlemen of the government,
Whoa.
dear representatives
On a first name basis.
of all the communities and cities, all citizens of
Yes.
Canada. In my opinion, one of the most startling qualities of your country is that justice is not an empty word for Canada. Another extremely important fact about you is that you never ever make a political bet on hatred and enmity. And you are always on the bright side of history. Thank you.
Clap time. Clap time. Look,
That's
look,
you.
his wife is like, oh my god, we're clapping again. He was laughing, dude.
During the First World War and in the time between those terrible wars, and during the Second World War, and during the Cold War, you always defended freedom. You have always defended justice. And I had no doubt that you would choose the side of freedom and justice when Russia launched a full-scale war against Ukraine. Thank you.
Oh, that was a preemptive thank you for the clapping he knew was going to happen. Yeah, you said the Ukrainian military buys everything at their own expense. The government doesn't give any money. What does that mean? Because I heard that a lot of the money that we're giving isn't actually going towards the war, but is going towards government employee pensions and shit. Like it's going towards government workers, and they're known for having a corrupt government, and they're not even going to have elections next year because he says it might be too hard on the people. That's not democracy, is it? It's a little wild because they're not really known for being democratic, are they? This is kind of new for them, pretty much. It was a testing ground, and I don't know, whatever. It didn't seem like it's working.
But it is never enough only to choose the right side. You also need to be able to be a leader on the side, and you do. You are a leader, and I thank you for that, Canada. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, standing clap. Another.
Thank you so much.
That's what I have noticed about Canada, dude. They
Thank
love
you very much
the clap.
for
I was
your-
just saying that.
Thank you very much for your political support for Ukraine. And this is truly support of a leader. And it is global in scale. Because when you are fighting for something, when you are fighting for good, in human nature, the false neutrality looks obviously immoral. When one sees true leaders, all others who are afraid to be real, to speak out, to fight, have only two opinions: to change or to be looked down. And I thank you, Canada, for being a real example of leadership and honesty for so many around the world, an example that inspires others to defend life. Canada's support for Ukraine with weapons and equipment has allowed us to save thousands of lives. This includes air defense systems, armored vehicles, artillery shells, and very significant assistance in demining. Thank you so much. Canada's leadership in sanctions against Russia for this war and terror really encouraged others in the world to follow your lead. And I'm especially grateful for your extremely strong 100% leadership support of the Ukrainian movement to NATO. For your strong participation in training our soldiers. It's very important.
Oh, they
It's
weren't in
already a
NATO
tradition
before?
that Canada trains those who defend the world. Thousands. Yes.
Oh. Oh, I didn't realize that. Just this year they became part of NATO.
Thousands
Wow.
and thousands of pilots during the Second World War. Thousands of Ukrainians now. And this is what makes
Will
victory.
become. Have it? Has it happened?
Victory strong. Victory indispensable. Training.
Because this is kind of news. It's news for everywhere now, actually, because it says here it's happened on September 30th, 2023. Ukraine. Made it official. Oh, Mattis lost it. Had I lost it? Oh, it just happened, right? Do I know what I'm talking about? On September 20, 2022, Ukraine formally applied to join NATO. But when did they get admitted into NATO? I didn't realize it was so soon. So, all of a sudden, everybody's just extremely trustworthy of Ukraine? How did that happen?
Victory strong. Victory indispensable. Training.
Oh, they rejected it.
Thank you for this.
Oh.
Thank you for your economic support, for helping Ukraine to get rid of its dependence on Russian nuclear fuel. And this is progress, not only for us, really. Ukraine and Canada together with their partners and really friends are demonstrating to everyone that it is quite realistic to completely cut off our ties with dubious Russian nuclear technologies, in addition to be purely technological danger. The Russian nuclear industry also serves Moscow's political expansion. Russia uses nuclear technology and construction of nuclear power plants like gas and oil for political attacks against the sovereignty of other nations. Russia is trying to break the sovereignty of others through its manipulation of energy resources, all energy resources. So the more nations are free from Russian energy resources, the sooner energy in the world will once again become just an energy resource. Not a weapon. Not a weapon against sovereignties. Another important area of our cooperation, literally justice. Today, in talks with Prime Minister, with Justin, we discussed the Canadian initiative for the G7 to set up efforts to confiscate Russian assets. Those funds that Russia and its henchmen used to pay for their war should be used to fairly compensate for the damage caused by war and terror. Active and global work is also required to bring Russia to justice for the crime of aggression itself and for absolutely all crimes from this aggression. All deaths, every deportation of every child, every adult, every life needs to be protected. And every attacked nation needs justice to rule. The world needs it too, so that other potential aggressors can see that war ends in verdicts for the aggressor. And I urge you, Canada, to extend your ability to lead to other countries, especially in this matter of justice, of prosecuting the aggression, of compensation for aggression, of making the aggressor feel how strong justice is. And most of all, I would like to thank you, Canada, for the purely human thing, for making Ukrainians feel at home when they are here in Canada. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
And who's this lady? Knock it off. She's like that weirdo we have in Congress that wears all the crazy shit. She's like 99.
And this is, this is not just a legacy of history. This is a legacy of character. The Ukrainian-Canadian community is about millions
I see
of
you, man.
Ukrainian destinies that have become the destiny of Canada with all its diversity of communities. Freedom, loving, courage, our special inner call for justice. The ability of our people to share comfort wherever they go, to build and create, not to ruin or humiliate. Ukrainian flags in Canada are a part of everyday life as absolute trust to Canada in Ukraine. In fact, such proximity provides many answers, including answers to the question about this war. Can we give up? No. Can we betray the good in human nature? No. Can we agree to evil? No. Can we allow our identity to be erased? No. Ukraine and Canada are the same. We stand and we fight for life. Ukraine, not genocide, will be victorious in this war. People will be the winners, not the Kremlin.
Winners.
Freedom will be the winner.
I want
Justice
to
will
be
be
the
the
winner.
winner. You can know this for sure about us, because you know for sure about yourself that you would never submit to evil.
Why is his speech so much longer for Canada than it was for America? Oh, he was like, where's my clap at? He paused for them that time. He was like, huh, I know that shit deserved a clap. What are y'all waiting for?
Je te remercie, Canada.
Thank you, Canada.
Oh my god, another clap. Give him a longer clap for that one because that was just unreal. The bravery. He's spoken French.
And may one day soon a monument be built in maybe Edmonton.
Dude, this is so much longer than what he gave us.
In other cities of the world and in the cities of Ukraine to honor the victory of our people in this war.
I watched it. I watched everything that they did. I watched everything from him arriving to what he did. Oh, there was like 3 different live streams that they did. It was all broken up the day before yesterday or yesterday. It was nothing like this, dude. It's wild. We give them way more money.
Our common victory.
What is this?
Common victory with you, the people of Canada, with all your communities, with all your legacy of good. Ladies and gentlemen.
Why didn't we let him talk as much?
And
That's what it boils down
our
to.
beautiful First Lady.
We didn't let him.
had really had the honor of meeting with the Governor General of Canada, Honorable Mary Simon, and she taught me a word from her mother tongue. Ayuinata. Ayuinata. She said the meaning of this word is don't give up. Don't give up, stay strong against all odds. And so shall it be. Ayuinata, Canada. Ayuinata, Ukraine. Slava Ukraine!
Because he definitely wanted as much airtime as he could get in every country he's doing this in, right? Because then he can really butter up the people to want to pay for their war. We didn't let him butter up our people. So I don't know if it's about being nice. It's interesting that dynamic to it. It's the first time he came through, they let him butter us up, but this time, no, not so much. They rushed him through. Look at this, I got a flag waving in the background and all this, like... Hey, Chrissy's from Canada too. We got 2 Canadians in the house I know of. Welcome. That's pretty cool. How you been? How you been, Chrissy? I know most of y'all don't use Twitch. I don't really either, usually, unless I'm watching a game or something, a game streamer. I understand why none of y'all, or most of y'all don't come through.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I now invite the Honorable Raymond Gagné, Speaker of the Senate, to take the floor.
I wouldn't want to wear that outfit.
Monsieur le Président,
President,
Madame Zelenskyy,
Ms.
Premier
Zelenskyy,
ministre Trudeau,
Prime Minister
Président
Trudeau,
Rota,
Speaker Rota,
chers
dear
parlementaires,
parliamentarians,
éminents invités,
distinguished guests,
Mesdames et Messieurs,
ladies and gentlemen.
Monsieur le Président,
Mr.
c'est un
President,
grand honneur
it
et
is
un
a
réel
great honor
privilège
and
pour
a
moi de
real
vous
privilege for
remercier
me
de vos
to thank
paroles
you
très
for your very
puissantes
powerful
et très
and very
inspirantes.
inspiring words.
Nous sommes tous
We are
et
all
toutes honorés de
honored
votre présence.
by your presence.
La dernière
The
fois
last
que vous
time
vous
you
êtes
addressed
adressé à
this
ce Parlement,
Parliament,
quelques
just a
semaines à
few
peine,
weeks
suivant
after
l'assaut
Russia's
généralisé de
full-scale
votre pays
assault
par la
on your
Russie,
country,
vous nous aviez
you implored
supplié
us to
d'imaginer
imagine
ce que
what the
ressentait le
Ukrainian
peuple
people were
ukrainien,
feeling,
d'imaginer
to
ce que c'est
imagine
d'être
what it's like to be
bombardé
bombed
et envahi
and
sans
invaded
provocation,
without provocation,
d'imaginer ce
to
que l'on
imagine what it
ressent
feels like
quand on
to
comprend la
understand the
signification
meaning
de
of the
l'invasion,
invasion,
c'est-à-dire que la
that
Russie
Russia
n'attaquait
was
pas
not only
uniquement le
attacking
territoire
Ukrainian
ukrainien,
territory,
mais
but
aussi
also
sa
its
souveraineté
very
même.
sovereignty.
Monsieur le Président,
Mr.
je
President,
peux dire
I can
sans
say
hésiter
without
que
hesitation
nous vous
that
avons
we have
entendu.
heard you.
Vos paroles
Your
ont
words have
résonné
echoed
dans les
in the
chambres
chambers
de notre
of
Parlement,
our Parliament,
dans nos
in
salles
our
de
committee
comité
rooms
et nos
and
bureaux
offices,
et aux
and
quatre
all
coins de
across
notre
our
grand
great
pays.
country.
Shortly after I became Speaker of the Senate of Canada, I was asked about the importance of role models, and I expressed my belief that if you see it, you can be it. Mr. President, a new generation is seeing you. Having worked with young people in the field of education for over 35 years, and as a mother of 2 male adult children, I am heartened by the model you are showing.
Yeah, it's a lot better than a comedian, I guess. I don't know. He's president. That's pretty crazy.
Young people around the world are seeing that a democratically elected voice is the real form of power. Monsieur le Président, depuis plus de 18 mois, vous êtes l'exemple même de la mobilisation populaire et une source d'inspiration pour le monde. Que vous parliez depuis un bunker ou derrière un lutrin, dans une salle de réunion ou sur la ligne de front. Vous n'avez jamais baissé les bras, vacillé, ni hésité, incarnant l'esprit et la résilience du peuple ukrainien.
Hey, Jim. Don't chop a finger off. I don't know what he does for work. I forgot. I remember.
Je ne suis sûrement pas la première à le mentionner, mais qui pourrait oublier le 25 février 2022? Vous vous teniez dans le centre de Kiev, la cible de l'envahisseur russe. C'était l'un des moments les plus périlleux et incertains de la guerre, et vous aviez un message fort à transmettre. Nous sommes ici. Your people have carried forward this resolve at Hostomel, at Kharkiv, and beyond. While we draw inspiration from their stories, we also recognize the realities Ukrainians have faced. Withstanding thousands of artillery rounds every day, grieving the unrelenting loss of family, loved ones, colleagues, and neighbors, patiently working through treacherous minefields while drones circle overhead, defending against waves of attacks on civilian infrastructure, and taking steps where and when they can to recover and rebuild. Mr. President, your people's resilience in the face of such aggression compels the international community, in your now famous words, to be here for Ukraine, however long it takes.
Yeah, but why can't, like, Europe be there more than North America?
And our message today, which you can bring back to your people, is equally clear. The Canadian people stand with Ukraine. We aren't going anywhere.
Can Europe give just 60% of the money to Ukraine, at least, rather than like 25%? That'd be great.
Au nom de tous les sénateurs, de tous les députés de la Chambre des communes, et à n'en pas douter de tous les Canadiens, je vous remercie encore une fois de votre courage, de votre détermination.
I mean, we also pay mostly for NATO too, America. So there's that.
Au peuple canadien et au monde entier.
Why we gotta be Captain Save-A-Ho to everybody? They need to fucking throw some spec on it. Forget who they fucking with over here. Yeah, 650 million. It's a lot for Canada, maybe. I don't know.
Merci, Madame
It could be
Mr. President.
spending that much on fucking illegal aliens.
Mr. President, as has been noted today, you join a very small group of world leaders who have addressed a joint session of our Parliament for a second time. Among those leaders, one stands out for his oratory, his leadership in the face of adversity, and his strong determination to fight on behalf of his people and on behalf of what is right. That leader was the late African president and Nobel.
But I agree, that money could be used for something else, like your illegal aliens that are coming through your fucking southern border, because some of them are traveling all the way through and trying to get into Canada.
Peace Prize winner Nelson Mandela.
Apparently they're kicking them back into our country now. We have an agreement so that they can't do that. We have to take them back. and they get to live here.
Address to join
That's sweet.
to the joint session of our Parliament, Nelson Mandela said of the Canadian people, and I quote, "They are like us, like brothers and sisters."
Yeah,
whose warm
they're coming to your border, but you guys aren't letting them stay. I remember that happened like 4 months ago or something. Canada signed something to where you're no longer able to stay there, and they'll kick them back here, but they'll get to stay here. But they're trying to come there. Yeah, I agree. Some of them are. Well, not most of them. No, it's too cold up there. Maybe some of the Chinese. Because, dude, did y'all see? We're being flooded by Chinese. They are coming across our borders over 1,000% higher rate than they did just last year. It's like 1,300% higher.
They are like us, like brothers and sisters, from whose warm embrace we shall never be parted. Mr. President, I want you to know that we feel like that still with Ukraine. Je suis convaincu que vous partagez la même conviction après votre visite aujourd'hui, Monsieur le Président. En effet, au-delà de la métaphore, les liens entre le Canada et l'Ukraine sont surtout des liens familiaux, des liens entre nos deux peuples renforcés par la communauté canado-ukrainienne qui compte 1,3 million de personnes. Your words today also remind us of another world leader who addressed both our houses during the time of war. In December 1941, during World War II, the British Prime Minister, Sir Winston Churchill, traveled to Ottawa and delivered an impassioned speech on behalf of his people to rally for the continued support for his country at war. It was a defining moment of history and one that must never be forgotten. We have here in the chamber today Ukrainian-Canadian world veteran from the Second World War who fought the Ukrainian independence against the Russians and continues to support the troops today, even at his age of 98. His name is Yaroslav Hunka. And I was going to say he's in the gallery, but I think you beat me to that. But I'm very proud to say that he is from North Bay and from my riding of Nipissing-Temiskaming. He's a Ukrainian hero, a Canadian hero, and we thank him for all his service. Thank you. Alors que la liberté régresse dans de nombreuses régions du monde et que les autocrates soutiennent mutuellement la résistance de l'Ukraine à rallier la démocratie et les démocraties et nous en pousse à l'action. Resistance often starts at the top. When you, Mr. President, with you, Mr. President, but also with the Verkhovna Rada, where the business of Parliament, the people's business, has never stopped. I know that parliamentarians in this chamber have marveled at the courage and determination of our counterparts. Ukrainian legislators have pursued their critical work despite the continued warning of missiles and drones, despite the threat to well-being of their families and homes, and despite the overwhelming challenges of recovery and rebuilding. Throughout this terrible war, I have had the great privilege of developing a great friendship with my counterpart, the Speaker of the Verkhovna Rada, Chairman Stefanchuk. Like you, Mr. President, he advocates for his country with passion and with poise. And like you, he has conveyed what is at stake: Ukraine's freedom, but also preservation of the rules-based international order, which is a fundamental part of the future of the democratic world. Most recently, we spoke at the G7 Speakers Summit in Japan. At that time, he shared with me a drawing from a young Ukrainian girl who thanked Canada for our support and our shared wish that all Ukrainian children should live under peaceful skies. It moved me to tears, and it moves me there again. Ce sont des moments comme
It is
ceux-ci,
moments like
des
these,
liens comme ceux-là,
bonds like these,
qui nous rappellent
that remind
que nous
us
devons tous
that we
nous
must
tenir
all
debout
stand
aux côtes
with
de l'Ukraine
Ukraine
face à la
in the
menace qui
face of the
pèse
threat
sur sa
to its
souveraineté.
sovereignty.
Mr. President, Canada has stood with Ukraine people throughout its proud history, and that will not change. We will continue to stand for justice and peaceful skies over Ukraine. Thank you once again for addressing our Parliament. Slava Ukraini!
Glory to Ukraine.
You know, the clapper was invented in Canada. Clap on, clap off. The clapper.
Thank you.
Just kidding.
Very nice.
I don't know where it was invented.
Thank you.
What do you say to him? You look very nice.
Thank you. Very nice.
Oh, very nice. He was actually being sarcastic. He's got his pimpin' tie on. What is up with, yo, what does this dude have on his back? A spider ribbon. Dude's got a bow on his back.
Now, if I can just have your attention just for a few moments. We know we have some of the delegation that are going to have to leave, so we'll allow them to go first.
Is it over?
And maybe some of our media friends and photographers and all those fun things. But if all of us could maybe just have a seat, speak amongst yourselves, talk about how great.
Acts like he's in charge of a kindergarten class.
From our friend President Zelenskyy. So I will come back in about 3 minutes to be able to tell you. Venir dans
Looks like
I'll be back in about 3 minutes
like a
to
pilgrim.
tell you that you may now leave.
Take a seat and chat amongst yourselves.
Oh, they can't leave because he's got to leave the building
We
and
could have
shit?
question period if anyone was interested. Yeah? Fine? All right. The Honourable Member for New Westminster, Burnaby.
Are any Canadian like parliamentary people against this? Where's Canada? Because I know that we have people in Congress that are against giving Ukraine money, any more money, and it might screw up. Here's the detail on that. Right now, what's holding up, from my understanding, what's holding up the budget is military spending, because the Dems are trying to fit in Ukraine into our military budget. And while a lot of right-wing representatives are down with it, some of them aren't. And all of them, they need all of them for it to work pretty much, because there's enough of them to stop it. There's enough Republicans to stop, and they're stopping it off of military spending, which they're trying to get them to take out the Ukraine money. That's my understanding of it. So, and that happens in 8 days or so, 7 days, something like that. Well, like it's boiling down to that's going to be one of the major arguments. And it's kind of one of the reasons why I came back over to YouTube is because I see that this stuff's about to start ramping up a lot more. This content on Twitch doesn't even do anything at all. And maybe I'll transfer over to Rumble or something eventually, but I have to start off on YouTube again, even though they've cut me off completely. I might do Twitch for some things still, just to give back to the people that are, you know, that want me over on Twitch, but I have a strong bond with Ukraine, I guess. Well, why don't y'all give them billions then? Why don't you give them 50 billion? So, since it's so strong, match what we're giving them. I had something else. Oh, it's over here. What is this? Biden's live right now.
Period. Afternoon.
Gun violence speech.
So I will start by thanking our President, Joe Biden, for his long-standing leadership in the fight to save lives from gun violence. I also want to thank my husband, the second gentleman of the United States, and the extraordinary members of our administration, the members of Congress, survivors, advocates, and our incredible young leaders who raise their voice and demand change. So we are all gathered here today for a simple reason. We agree that in a civil society, the people must be able to shop in a grocery store, walk down the street, or sit peacefully in a classroom and be safe from gun violence.
Hey, lame strangers, you know, so everybody knows. I don't know. I asked you too why I got demonetized on both channels. I sent them multiple messages I appealed it, asked them to look at it, asked them to let me know what exactly I did wrong, what I can fix, please, so I can. There's nothing. They never told me anything. They were like, well, you got the letter. The letter doesn't actually specify what I did wrong at all. It doesn't make any sense, dude. YouTube's fucked up.
But instead, our nation is being torn apart by the tragedy of it all, and torn apart by the fear and trauma that results from gun violence. Recently, I have met with students on college campuses across our country, and when I'm there, every time I turn to the students and I make a request of them, and what I ask is, please raise your hand if you have had an active shooter drill while you were in elementary or middle school. Every time, a sea of hands goes up. Because in today's world, on the first day of school, students, yes, learn the name of their teacher. Yes, they learn the location of their cubby.
And then go through gun safety drill. Who gives a shit? Why don't you just give the teachers guns? Can we fix it? They're doing this in some schools, y'all. They're giving random teachers with guns, and they're not allowed to tell each other who has them. So it's like the pilot or the cops that are on planes. You don't know who's the cop on the plane. They're doing that in schools now. I mean, do shit like that, man. That would discourage more shooters than anything. I think not knowing what teacher's got a fucking pistol in their pocket. Like, instead they want to take all the guns away and no one. Anyway, y'all know. Yep, fucking preaching to the choir over here.
Learn how to quietly hide from an active shooter. In fact, when having this conversation, a student once told me, "I don't like going to fifth period." "Why, honey?" I asked. "Because in fifth period, there's no closet." In our country today, 1 in 5 people has lost a family member to gun violence. Across our nation, every day about 120...
Wait, what? 1 in 5 people has lost a family member to gun violence? That's fucking crazy high.
Today, 1 in 5 people has lost a family member to gun violence. Across our nation, every day about 120 Americans are killed by a gun. And while this violence impacts all communities,
that's really high, though.
It does not do so equally. Black Americans are 10 times more likely
they're shooting each other, bro.
And homicide.
Man.
Latino Americans twice as likely. And as a former courtroom prosecutor, I will tell you I have personally prosecuted homicide cases. I have seen with my own eyes what a bullet does to the human body. We cannot normalize any of this. These are not simply statistics. These are our children, our brothers and sisters, our mothers and fathers. As a former district attorney, attorney general, and U.S. senator, and now as vice president of the United States, I have grieved with parents who have lost a child. I have comforted children who have been traumatized by losing a parent or a sibling. We owe it to them and to those living in fear to act without delay. And on this issue, we do not have a moment to spare, nor a life to spare. And here's the thing, solutions do exist.
Okay,
It's
I'm
a false
listening.
choice to suggest you either have to choose between supporting the Second Amendment or passing reasonable gun safety laws. That's a false choice. Yep. President Biden and I believe in the Second Amendment, but we also know common sense solutions are at hand.
Okay.
So I'll close with just a couple points.
Give us
First,
some.
President Biden and I continue to be deeply
What are
inspired by the students
What
who
are the
are
common
leading
sense?
this movement.
Give us what you got, lady.
So many of whom are here. And second, in so many ways, we are then propelled by their work, by your work. And being propelled by what you are doing, we are expanding our work. With this new office, we will use the full power of the federal government
What new office?
to strengthen the coalition of survivors and advocates and students and teachers and elected leaders to save lives and fight for the right of all people to be safe from fear and to be able to live a life where they understand that they are supported.
Breaking news. President Joe Biden to establish first ever White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention to be overseen by Vice President Kamala Harris. Happened 21 hours ago. That's the first I heard about that.
In that desire and that right. And with that, I will now introduce a national leader.
Did you know that
On
happened?
this issue. He was only 15 years old when he joined this movement. He is an organizer, he is an advocate, he is a coalition builder, and he is the first Gen Z member of the United States Congress. Representative
What's funny about that? She needs to get off the Xanax or whatever it is. It's too high. The dose is too high.
It feels good to be a part of a winning movement. Good afternoon, and thank you, Vice President Harris, for the amazing introduction. It's the honor of a lifetime to be here today as President Biden cements his legacy as one of the fiercest champions of gun violence prevention. President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. I'm Congressman Maxwell Alejandro Frost, proudly representing Central Florida in the House of Representatives.
He's got to be a Democrat, right?
As the member of the United States Congress and first member of Gen Z.
Hold up.
Frost, proudly representing
Maxwell Frost.
Central Florida in the House of Representatives. As the youngest member of the United States Congress and first member of Gen Z, I'm often asked what got me involved in this work, and the answer is quite simple. I didn't want to get shot in school. I was 15 years old when a shooter walked into Sandy Hook Elementary School and murdered 20 children and 6 teachers. And like millions of kids, I went to school the next day with anxiety and fear that my life would be taken, my friends' lives would be taken, and my family's life would be taken by senseless gun violence. Right before I was elected to Congress, I served as the National Organizing Director for March for Our Lives, a movement that inspired young people across the nation to demand safe communities. And we came together, Everytown, Brady, Newtown Action Alliance, Gifford, Sandy Hook Promise, Moms Demand Action, Change the Rep, the Community Justice Action Fund, and so many on-the-ground organizations that have been doing this work for decades. It's because of that steadfast, passionate organizing that we are a winning movement. But we're a winning movement doing very difficult work, because the brutal truth is usually when the most people are paying attention to our movement, it's usually coupled with carnage and death. But not today. Today, the country sees us here at the White House with a president who is taking action. My very first bill as a member of Congress was to introduce the Office of Gun Violence Prevention Act of 2023.
Leveled up, motherfucker. Level 2!
To bring together a coordinated response on this issue. And today, that bill and our ask as a movement will become a reality due to the executive action and leadership of President Biden and Vice President Harris. See, the president understands that this issue, especially for young people, especially for marginalized communities, is a matter of survival. He's a president who's been fearless enough to reject the gun lobby and sign into law the first major federal gun legislation passed in nearly 30 years, the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act.
Oh, I need to look into that.
And look, this action and that legislation come from love. From Pulse to Parkland, we fight because we love. From Breonna Taylor to Trayvon Martin, we fight because we love. From Tiana Major, Joaquin Oliver, Jamie Guttenberg, we fight because we love. Because when you love somebody, you want them to live free of gun violence. That is what true freedom is. And President Biden wants that safety and freedom for every American. And if this week has shown us anything, because the White House has been very busy this week, it's that Joe Biden wants to be and is a president that understands the power of young people. A president fighting for the world that we deserve. Today, as this administration announces yet another piece of groundbreaking action in the fight to save lives, I am proud to introduce the President of the United States of America, President Joe Biden.
It paid for a lot of mental health programs, it seems. It doesn't really have anything to do with guns. They just try to help kids that are getting bullied and stuff. The Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. Vital mental health services and provides additional support for states and districts to design and enhance initiatives that will promote safer and more inclusive and positive school environments for all students, educations, and school staff. What? That's his parents? Hold up. Where's the milkman at?
Congressman Frost, thank you for the introduction. And,
oh, maybe he's adopted.
You've helped the power movement that's turning a cause into reality. You know, you're the big reason why I'm so optimistic about America's future. So many engaged young people So many engaged, I remember when I was young. We have something in common. I got elected to the Senate when I was 29 years old. The only difference was he was eligible when he got elected to take office. I had to wait 17 days to be eligible. That was 827 years ago, but it was a while. Folks, Vice President Harris, members of the cabinet, so many members of Congress.
I don't think he's close enough to it. Oh.
You know, one of the members who will be here today is a really important member, Senator Chris Murphy. With Chris, who together with Congressman Frost introduced the bill, created a dedicated gun violence prevention office, he couldn't be here today. Since the tragedy in Sandy Hook, and I remember being there, I remember that how I met with every one of the parents with it, met with every member, every family member. What I do also remember is that I remember as
he doesn't remember.
The state police doing the investigation asked Senator to meet with me, if I could meet with him. And I said, of course I would. And I think there were about 12 to 14 of them. And I walked in the room, and two of them started crying. And they said, we need help. We need help. And I looked at them, I said, what can I do? They said, we need psychiatric help. We need help. We need help. Anyone who doesn't think that these kinds of engagements have a permanent effect on young children, in many cases older their entire lives if they never had a bullet touch them, misunderstands.
Why is he so mad?
Hard and tough cops asking me, could I get them psychiatric help? To all the state and local leaders and advocates from all across the country, and to the survivors and families who are with us today, many of whom Jill and I have gotten to know. And by the way, our losses may be different circumstances, but I know events like this are really hard to attend. We want to be here to promote the change, but it brings back all the memories as it happened a day ago. And I thank you to those of you who are parents for being here, brothers and sisters for being here. It matters. You have absolute courage. You found purpose in your pain. Because of all of you here today, all across the country, survivors, families, advocates, especially young people who demand our nation do better to protect all, who protested, organized, voted, and ran for office, and yes, marched for their lives. I'm proud to announce the creation of the first ever White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention. First office in our history.
It was actually posted to the White House website 21 hours ago, though.
Created by executive order, I determined to send a clear message about how important this issue is to me and to the country. It matters, and here's why. After every mass shooting, we hear a simple message. The same message all over the country. I've been to every mass shooting. Do something. Please do something. Do something to prevent the tragedies that leave behind survivors who will always carry the physical and emotional scars. Families will never quite be the same. Communities overwhelmed by grief and trauma. Do something. Do something. My administration has been working relentlessly to do something. To date, my administration has announced dozens of executive actions to reduce gun violence, more than any of my predecessors at this point in their presidencies, and they include everything from cracking down on ghost guns, breaking up gun trafficking, and so much more. And last year, with your help, I signed into law the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, the most significant gun safety law in almost 30 years.
Guns? I didn't see that.
It strengthens background checks, expands the use of red flag laws, improves access to mental health services, and so much more. This historic law will save lives. It's a really important first step. And by the way, I was the guy along with
Any of that.
who also who once banned assault weapons and mobile magazines. We're going to do it again. We're going to do it again. call to action, a reason to hope. Because for so long, the conventional wisdom was we'd never get any Republicans to support gun safety legislation. But we did. For the first time in 3 decades, we came together to overcome the relentless opposition from the gun lobby, gun manufacturers, and so many politicians opposing common sense gun legislation. And we beat them. And we did it through a bipartisan effort that included a majority of responsible gun owners. We're not stopping here. Again, I'll say it again. I'm not going to be quiet until we get it done. It's time again to ban assault weapons high capacity.
Dude, you know what I realized, and I probably realized it before, but I'm realizing they're doing it a lot lately, is they're trying to say bipartisan with every other sentence so that it gets as many people to jump ship from their side and be like, okay, man, maybe he's right. Other people are doing it. You know, they did it on the last one. He said bipartisan a minute ago. I'm probably gonna. Yeah, he's got me. Right? I've never been this much into politics in my life, dude.
You need 80 shots in a magazine. You should own a gun. Because look, last time we did it, it worked. We also, last time we established universal background checks that require safe storage of firearms. It's time. It's time.
What? Last time we...
Also, last time we established universal background checks that require safe storage of firearms. It's time.
What does that mean? Last time we
established universal background checks that require safe storage of firearms.
What do background checks have to do with storage of firearms?
Well, we push for Congress to do more. We're going to centralize, accelerate, and intensify our work to save more lives more quickly. That's why this new White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention is what it's designed to do. It will drive and coordinate a government and a nationwide effort to reduce gun violence in America, and will be overseen by an incredible Vice President who understands this. Really. That's not hyperbole, that's a fact. She's been on the front lines of this her entire career.
Dude,
as a prosecutor.
I bet she's even tired of him saying hyperbole.
As an Attorney General and as a United States Senator. Her deep experience will be invaluable for this office. And Steph, where's Steph Feldman? Steph, I want you to stand up, please. Steph Feldman. She's been working on this issue with me since Sandy Hook in 2012. Now, she was 13 years old when she joined me, but in 2012, will serve as director of the office.
See, that's creepy. When he brings up that she was 13 years old when she joined him and he remembers that, someone who's known for sniffing kids shouldn't be bringing up memories like that. And he's always saying shit like that, right? Like, oh, you're only 17 or whatever.
The office will have 4 primary responsibilities.
Not a good look,
First,
man.
Expedite the implementation of the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act and the executive actions already announced. And I mean it. We're going to fully implement it. Second, coordinate more support for survivors, families, and communities affected by gun violence, including mental health care, financial assistance, the same way FEMA responds to natural disasters. Just like same way. And help folks recover and rebuild and all of it. Look, folks, shootings are the ultimate superstar, ripping through communities. Third, identify new executive actions we can take within our legal authority to reduce gun violence. And fourth, expand our coalition of partners in states and cities across America, because we do have partners to get more. We need more state and local help to get these laws passed locally as well. And to strengthen our laws and give us more hope. Folks, to be clear, none of these steps alone is going to solve the entirety of the gun violence epidemic. None of them. But together, they will save lives. And it's going to help. It'll help rally the nation with a sense of urgency and seriousness of purpose. Today, guns, I never thought I'd even remotely say this in my whole career. Guns are the #1 killer of children in America. Guns. are the #1 killer of children in America, the United States of America. More than car accidents, more than cancer, more than other diseases.
What, fentanyl?
In 2023 so far, our country has experienced more than 500 mass shootings and well over 30,000 deaths due to gun violence. This is totally unacceptable. It's not who we are. And we have to act, we have to act now. And let me be very clear. If members of the Congress refuse to act, then we'll need to elect new members of Congress that will act. Democrat or Republican. Look, folks, there comes a point where our voices are so loud, our determination so clear, that our effort can no longer be stopped. We're reaching that point. We've reached that point today, in my view, where the safety of our kids from gun violence is on the ballot. At the end of the day, whether the Democrats or Republicans, we all want our families to be safe. We all want to go to school, houses of worship, grocery stores, gyms, malls, movies, without constant anxiety. We all want our kids to have the freedom to learn how to read and write in school instead of ducking cover, for God's sake. And it matters. So let me close with this. Earlier this summer, I was in Connecticut at a summit on gun safety hosted by Senator Murphy. 4 students impacted by gun violence who are here with us today summoned extraordinary courage and stood and shared their stories on stage. 4 of them. They each came from different backgrounds, different parts of the country, different shootings. But they shared a common singular message. And one of them summed up in just a few words, and I quote, "The deadly and traumatic price for inaction." That's what he talked about, the deadly and traumatic price for inaction. They made clear what all of you know too well. That price can no longer be the lives of our children and the people of our country. They spoke for an entire generation of Americans who will not be ignored, will not be shunned, and will not be silenced. And I know progress is hard. I've been at this a long time, and we've done it before, we can do it again. If we're here, I'm here to tell you, to you and Vice President Harris hears you as well. You're right. You're right. We're by your side, and we're never going to get up. You can give up dealing with this problem. We're never going to forget your loved ones. We're never going to get there unless we remember. You know, I know we'll do this because I know you. Heroes. Heroes proving that even with heavy hearts, you have unbreakable spirits. In memory of your loved ones, you're building a movement that endures. Above all, you'll never give up on the one thing you must never lose: hope. 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 Jill and I, Kamala and Doug, our entire administration, more determined than ever to carry forward that hope, that inspiration, that light that you continue to give us all. For the lives we have lost, or for the lives we can save, we can do this. We just have to keep going. We just have to keep the faith. We just have to remember who we are. Every time I walk out of my grandpa's house up in Scranton, he'd yell, "For real. Joey, keep the faith." My grandmother would know, Joey, spread it. Spread it. That's what we have to do. Spread the faith. And remember, really sincerely, we are the United States of America. There is nothing beyond our capacity when we do it together. Nothing we've ever tried to solve and done together we haven't succeeded. God bless you all. May God protect our troops. May God protect our children. Thank you so much.
Distinguished guests, please remain in the Rose Garden as the President and the Vice President depart. Thank you.
You know what's wild is the President of the United States is probably the hardest person to be able to stand next to. Out of all the people in our country, he would be definitely the hardest to like play tag with. Like alright, you gotta tag the President. And you win $100 billion. It's some crazy rich man thing. If you can touch the President, yeah, it's one good way to get shot probably. I don't know how that works. Everybody just tackle you. Hey, you too, man. Later. Can I stand for this song? Oh, dude. Did you hear that horn? That dude's been playing French horn for 50 years. He is the best in DC. Ah! I made a mess. He's got that French horn down, baby. Oh, what is that? Do they actually have an orchestra in there, though? Probably. Paid for by the American people, of course, because those people aren't there playing for free, are they? Look at all the security he's got just for being there, and all these people have been vetted already. It's wild, dude. What are they scared of? What is he? We're gonna bust something out real fast? Haven't they all been frisked already and shit? They're inside the Rose Garden. I mean, the Secret Service was still behind him as if the kid was gonna stab him with something. Yeah, but that's probably the best marching. Like, it's literally by the Washington Philharmonic Symphony or something they got in there. Either that or it's just a recording. They never actually showed them. Even our city does really stupid shit with the money, dude. I was just seeing a report recently that they had what was it for? Some anniversary of something. The general public wasn't even invited to the celebration, and they had some like $50,000 cake that had lights in it and stuff. It wasn't even edible. It was just a prop. And they spent 50 grand on that, and the mayor was drinking like $150 bottles of champagne. It's interesting how much wasteful spending there is just so they can have parties. Like, this is a party for them pretty much, right? Everybody just got together and they're hanging out. They get to have a little speech. They made the new office. What the fuck is that? Can they just keep making offices as long as they want? Is there a limit? They could just make infinite jobs or what? Got the Navy dude over here though, right? He's Navy. I can't see enough of the uniform. I know this is Navy, but I don't know if Marines uses this for their officers. No, that's Navy for sure. I see this now. Got a surface warfare pen for officers. That motherfucker on, dude, y'all missed it. I was playing with this dude on PUBG, trying to tell me I was stolen valor or something. I didn't know some clerk code. that nobody knows. Hilarious. Yo, what you doing? That's why Secret Service is out there flexing. Them hotties. Damn, his eyes are bugging though. He definitely looking at shit. Holy shit! Look at this guy's eyes, bro. He's all over the place. Bing bong, bing bong, bing bong, bing bong, bing bong. Yo, is he a robot? It's a cyborg human. He's had eyeball implant. Those aren't actually eyeballs, they're cameras. The real head though. It's taking pictures every time it does it. Actually has a photographic memory. That's why he's in Secret Service. What a trippy life that would be, dude. President guard. I bet it's hard as fuck to get that job too, because there are Secret Service that don't do presidential guard. They do like White House perimeter guard. Same Secret Service. They'll be on outside of the gate even with the Secret Service on their best and looking like kind of some goobers on their mountain bikes. And then there are these Secret Service. They're dressed, you know, nice ass suits on, like just their little pin and their earpiece to know that they're Secret Service. This has to be upper level. Like I bet you have to start off as one of the bike dudes on the outer gate and move your way up to one of these. But they're like like hierarchies with it. Yeah, there's no way they just let him jump into presidential guard. Oh, he'll tell him. He's got to tell the president something that guy just told him. Now he's presidential messenger. That's an important role. Oh, now he's like, you tell him. I don't know if I want to tell him. In case I can't tell him, you tell him. No? Yeah, we gotta tell him. But he's in a different colored coat. I wonder if that matters. He's got a blue coat on. Is he not as official as these guys in the gray coat? They stay closer to him. Oh look, the camera had to get in there because of blue hair. You know that's something. They gotta... Look, the president will even talk to a blue-haired person. Camera hadn't been there this entire time, dude. Oh, now another camera. Is that the same one? Is that somebody in particular, though? Maybe it's a black woman with blue hair. That's even better for his image. Yes. Get the black vote, get the blue-haired vote, probably get the lesbian vote. That's his publicist behind him, isn't it? She got 3 pictures of that interaction. Please. At least you get it from a different angle. Come here, buddy. Simon's meowing. He said hi, y'all. You can eat that without me put it in the middle, bro. Come on, yo. I'm tired of doing that. I'm making. I'm no longer enabling you to get fat anymore. If you don't want to eat it like that, don't eat it. Always put it out later. Dude, he's lost 12.5 pounds. He's over 12.5 pounds now. He's really spooging for a long time in here. Are these all like maybe people that have been victims of gun violence? I wouldn't even really care to. I don't know, man. I wouldn't care to have a picture with the president and with Biden personally. It's kind of weird. Unless he would sniff my neck. If he sniffed me, if I could get him to sniff me, if he wouldn't mind, then I would allow it. I could use that for a thumbnail. Oh, I forgot I have a totally unrelated thumbnail on today. Does he? Didn't it? Wow, he sleeps in there, right? He's just like, I'm going to sleep. Don't leave me alone. Boom, boom, boom. Oh, wait.
This is the fact.
Oh, more happened? Look, they're doing this now.
There are countries who can provide weapons, then there are countries who are ready to talk about working.
For Ukraine is His Excellency Volodymyr Zelenskyy, President of Ukraine.
They did something else, homie. See, stuff's picking up now, dude. I've been seeing it the past couple of weeks. News is picking up. I guess maybe summer's over. People are bored and inside making news. I don't know why it's happening now. The end of the fiscal year, though, has something to do with it, probably. Our Congress. And the war, also, this dude doing what he's doing. Taking his rounds. I don't know. What do you think? It seems like it's going to continue because, like, Trump is making his rounds across the country now, too. Going to different states. What else? The immigration thing is going haywire down the southern border and everywhere else, because the news for that's in all these different safe haven cities that they're going to. There's news every day with these places, dude, and a lot of the people aren't happy with what their governments are doing. Simon, why are you meowing so much? I'm gonna put Simon's shit in a fucking circle because he's non-stop meowing. I'll be back.
Please welcome the Prime Minister of Canada, the Right Honourable Justin Trudeau, and the President of Ukraine, His Excellency Volodymyr Zelenskyy.
Please welcome the Prime Minister of Canada, the Right Honourable Justin Trudeau, and the President of Ukraine, His Excellency Volodymyr Zelenskyy.
Like the tent cities that these places are building, it's nutty, dude. I think Chicago's building a tent city, and the company that took the contract also, no conflict of interest here, by the way, but they also have a contract with Florida to get immigrants out of Florida. To get them out of Florida. But now they got a contract with Chicago to have Tent City also this winter. Same company. Get them out of Florida, move them straight to Chicago. So a lot of Chicagoans aren't too happy about that one.
The signing is the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement.
The signing is the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement.
What's that mean? It's free to trade now, no taxing each other? No, that's another thing. They're going to be heated. There's all kinds of stuff about it. They're going to have childcare. The tents are going to have to be heated. The residents of Chicago are like, how the fuck do you expect that to happen once we get below zero? Exactly. And they're going to have the childcare. They're going to have healthcare. Like maybe even daycare, I think they said. Plus transportation to and from all these different things. And dude, it's insane. Actually, and then, dude, what Biden just did, I don't know if y'all heard, but with the Venezuelan thing, that's supposed to be taking care of like 500,000. That's only actually going to be taking care of like 10,000 people in New York, and they have what is it, 50,000 at least or more. It's taken, and it's not even going to be helping the ones that have gotten through after July. Supposedly there are millions in the pipeline at the moment too that are still on their way up here. Oh, and dude, Anthony just reported that the trains that they had originally stopped that were going, I forgot where they were going, something Pass. Now they're rerouting those to go to El Paso though, because El Paso has more funds for them. So, but El Paso's cool with it. That and maybe even San Antonio. It's it's fucking wild, dude. The trains that they stopped, that they halted for a couple of days or whatever, now they're being diverted to safe haven cities for the immigrants. Why don't we hold Mexico accountable, huh? They're enabling this to happen. They're letting them come through their country into ours. They're giving them permission to travel freely through their country. They don't have to do that, dude. They could make them stay in Tapachula once they cross
I now
over
invite Mr. Ior
into
Sirota,
Mexico.
Director General of Uker Hydroenergo,
But they
and Mr. John
folded.
M. Beck, Chairman of the Aecon Group Incorporated,
Mexico.
to take their seats at the signing table.
I now invite Mr. Ior Sirota, Director General of Uker Energo, and Mr. John M. Beck, Chairman of the Aecon Group Incorporated, to take their seats at the signing table.
Mr. Ior Sirota and Mr. John M. Beck will now sign the Memorandum of Collaboration between private joint stock company Uker Hydroenergo and Aecon Construction Global Services Incorporated on collaboration in the construction of a hydropower plant in Ukraine. Mr. Ior
Sirota and Mr. John M. Beck will now sign the Memorandum of Collaboration between private joint stock company Uker Hydroenergo and Aecon Construction Global Services Incorporated on collaboration in the construction of a hydropower plant in Ukraine.
This is big boy shit right here. Damn. $5 billion. You don't merely drop shit when you got the Ukrainian president. He's on edge, man. He should have dove under the table. That would have been epic. He's in the war fatigues. I want to see him move. Has he been working out too? Or is he just wearing the getup?
Thank you. This concludes the official ceremony. Merci.
Thank you. This concludes the official signing ceremony.
Dude, he's so short. Whoa. I wonder if that's normal for Ukraine. They're all stunted, maybe. Dude, Simon, you're being really something this morning, man. I don't know.
Good afternoon. Bonjour. It is Canada's great honor to have President Zelenskyy visit us here today. Thank you for coming, Volodymyr. We stand here absolutely united in our defense of democracy and our condemnation of Vladimir Putin's unprovoked, unjustified, and unconscionable invasion of Ukraine.
I've discussed in person today with President Zelenskyy during our tete-a-tete. We've also had a cabinet meeting. We discussed military needs, financial needs, and humanitarian needs for Ukraine today and for the future.
At each meeting, Canada was clear, as we always are, that we will stand with Ukraine with whatever it takes for as long as it takes. And today, we're backing up this commitment with further support. We are shifting our approach to provide multi-year assistance, ensuring Ukraine has the predictable support it needs for long-term success. As part of this approach, I'm announcing $650 million in new military assistance over the next 3 years to supply Ukraine with 50 armored vehicles, including armored medical evacuation vehicles that will be built by Canadian workers in London, Ontario. We will also contribute pilot and maintenance instructors to the Joint Coalition F-16, as well as support for Leopard 2 tank maintenance.
We will also provide Ukraine with 35 drones equipped with high-resolution cameras, and support services, as well as light vehicles and ammunition based on NATO standards. Earlier this week, Minister Blair confirmed that Canada will provide a financial contribution to the consortium led by the United Kingdom to deliver air defense equipment to Ukraine.
Ukraine's resilience to date has been remarkable, but their economy continues to need support so that it can withstand this invasion, so that government has the resources it needs to continue to provide services to its people, so that it has the long-term certainty to plan and coordinate assistance effectively, and so that when Ukraine is victorious, it will continue to be a strong and prosperous country. That is why I am today confirming that we will again provide substantial macroeconomic support to Ukraine in the 2024 fiscal year.
We've just signed a free trade agreement that supports the economic development of Ukraine and provides Canadian companies privileged access that will create jobs. And later today, I will head with Volodymyr to meet with leaders from the business world. We will discuss how the private sector can support efforts by Ukraine and already participate in rebuilding the country.
Meanwhile, we're continuing to impose costs on Russia and ensuring that those responsible for this illegal, unjustifiable invasion do not benefit from it. First, Canada and Ukraine have agreed to engage with G7 partners to establish a working group of eminent persons who will provide advice on the seizure and forfeiture of Russian assets, including of the Russian Central Bank. Second, we're adding another 63 Russian individuals and entities to our sanctions list, including those complicit in the kidnapping of children and the spreading of disinformation.
All of Ukrainian society needs support. To support civil society, we will assist local NGOs and assist the Ukrainian Parliament in improving its cyber resilience. To assist communities, we are also supporting the rebuilding of local infrastructure, and we are helping farmers who have been disturbed by Putin's actions.
To preserve the memory of victims of the Holodomor, Canada is prepared to contribute to the Holodomor Museum in Ukraine once appropriate arrangements are in place. And to help all affected Ukrainians, we're providing funding to make mental health support more available, because the toll this is taking on the well-being of citizens, even those not on the front lines, can never be understated. Évidemment,
of course, it will not be possible to rebuild before peace is reestablished. As I said in Parliament today, and as I said at the UN Security Council this week, this peace must not be a false peace based on compromises that reward the aggressor. We must have lasting peace, respecting the UN Charter, respecting international law, to restore territorial integrity to Ukraine.
it was powerful to hear President Zelenskyy speak to parliamentarians today. And this evening, he will again speak, this time directly to Canadians, including Ukrainian Canadians, at an event in Toronto. Over 1.4 million Canadians have Ukrainian roots, but this war has made all of us as Canadians connected to Ukraine. This country has seen an incredible outpouring of support that is unique in the way that it comes from all corners of society, from the diaspora, from different orders of government, from different charities, and from across the Canadian public, because your fight is our fight. These new announcements we have made build on nearly $9 billion of support since this full-scale invasion began, build on years of support through initiatives like Operation Unifier that has trained up tens of thousands of Ukrainian fighters, and a list of 2,700 individuals or entities that we have sanctioned since Putin illegally occupied Crimea in 2014. Canada's support for Ukraine is unequivocal and always will be. And Volodymyr, I have to say that the steadfastness and the strength of your leadership, of your compassion, and of how you have inspired not just Ukrainians, not just Canadians, but people all around the world to look at what they can do concretely to continue to stand up for what is right, continue to stand is an inspiration to us all, including to me, my dear friend. So thank you very much. We will continue to stand with you as long as it takes. Yes.
I thank you, Justin, my dear friend, Prime Minister, fellow guests, members of government, and journalists. Today, I, together with my First Lady of Ukraine, together with my team, have arrived to Canada in order to personally say thank you for all the support provided to the Ukrainians. At times of war and at different other times, the people of Ukraine are receiving only respect from the Canadians, only the desire to help, only the trust. So please know that we are greatly appreciating this support, and Ukraine shall always remember that. And when we will gain victory, and we will be victorious, you have to know this is going to be our common victory with the Canada, with all the partners, with all the friends, with the whole free world. That is free because there's nations that are protecting the freedom and life with dedication. It was an honor for me to address the Parliament of Canada. I thank you. This is already my second statement, but today it was offline, like face-to-face, and we are very grateful that all the parties, all the parliament are supporting us. We had also a very fruitful meeting with the General Governor of Canada, and surely we have very fruitful negotiations with Justin. I'm very grateful to you, and the Prime Minister, together with his strong team, has been always supporting us and assisting us. We have a very good agreements. Our defensive cooperation since the start of the full-scale aggression was very effective. Canada has provided us assistance for over 8 billion Canadian dollars. There's houses, armored vehicles, ammunition, firearms. Canada has trained over 40,000 of Ukrainian soldiers under the framework of the Unifier operation. I'd like to specially outline Canadian leadership in the humanitarian demining. This is very important for Ukrainians because around a third part of the territory of Ukraine are contaminated with the unexploded ordnance. These are the leftovers of the Russian shelling. This is an enormous amount of work that we would need to do in order to clean our territory from the mines. But I'm confident that together with the Canadian support, we shall be implementing and fulfilling those tasks. We highly appreciate the decision of the Canada to join the training program for F-16 pilots. I thank you, Justin. We have discussed in a detailed manner on the air defense. I've expressed gratitude for the procurement of additional missiles for air defense systems. This is a very timely decision, as a lot of missiles and Iranian drones are being used against our civilian infrastructure, against our people. Today we have received a new package of defense support. This was already mentioned by Justin, the armored vehicles as well as armored medical evacuation vehicles. This is something that we highly need for our wounded heroes. We have discussed our cooperation in the field of military industry and the joint production of the weaponry. We're expecting for the participation of the Ukrainian companies in the first forum of defense industries that will be held in Ukraine very soon. Then we've reinforced our economic cooperation. We have signed the renewed or updated free trade agreement. This will serve as the foundation for the renovation. Canada is one of our largest donors and very grateful for the decision to continue the support to Ukraine. What's important is ready and continues with further sanctions pressure against the aggressor, so that the aggressor would not be able to fund the aggression. Then we have discussed different aspects of the peace formula. That includes justice and the accountability for the damages caused by Russia to Ukraine as the result of this aggression. I'm grateful to Canada for supporting our work on the organization of the Global Peace Formula Summit, and I'm very grateful for the leadership to work on the security guarantees for Ukraine until the joining with NATO. Our teams are working on bilateral documents of security guarantees. One other very important thing, the Ukrainian community in Canada. I'm very grateful to all of its members. I'm very grateful that the Ukrainians in Canada, Ukrainian culture in Canada are always at the same level, together with other cultures and other languages of other minorities. The equality and respect to the other communities is an important characteristic of your country. This will always stay like that. I'm very grateful. Let us have the victory as soon as possible. Let us have our common victory. Slava Ukraine, Ukraine.
Minister, President Zelenskyy.
By the way, Ukraine has only been a country for 31 years, or 32 years.
We'll be taking 2 questions from the Canadian media, 2 questions from the Ukrainian media.
We will take 2 questions from Canadian media, 2 questions from the Ukrainian media. We will begin with
Anupchenko.
Mr. Prime Minister, Pane Presidente, I got a question for both of you. You will be likely agree that the most significant way Canada can help Ukraine is to guarantee security as long as the war continues, and to help in achieving a just peace. So, Mr. Trudeau, do you already know which security guarantees Canada will be able to provide to Ukraine? And for the peace plan, which steps of President Zelenskyy peace formula does Canada support? Пане Президенте, зважаючи і на рівень відносин.
Mr. President, considering the level of cooperation and your personal cooperation with the Prime Minister, what are your expectations of the support of Canada to your peace formula as well as the security guarantees for Ukraine?
Thank you very much. First of all, on the security guarantees, Canada is stepping up today to announce the kind of multi-year support that is a concrete embodiment of what we've been saying since the very beginning, which is that Canada will stand with Ukraine with whatever it takes for as long as it takes. This is not just because Canada and Ukraine are historical friends, that we have deep people-to-people ties, or even that Vladimir and I are great friends in person. It's because this is the right thing to do. Ukraine is standing up and fighting and dying for the rules-based order that protects all of us. It is in Canadians' interests to ensure that Ukraine wins this war, that Russia does not win this war. The impacts that we're feeling, whether it's on food and grocery prices or fuel prices, have been deeply negatively impacted for families from coast to coast to coast, and indeed around the world, by this war. And that's why we will continue to stand with Ukraine with whatever it takes for as long as it takes. When it comes to the peace process, we fully support the peace process. And the biggest challenge we have is understanding that we can't pick all of them to lead on. We have to pick just a few, and we're in conversations with that. One of the ones that we are very much looking at is how we can support around displaced persons and the abduction of children. That's something that Canada has, obviously, when it comes to migration and welcoming 175,000 Ukrainians and counting, an example of a place where we can show leadership on this issue around the world.
Thank you for your question. Good afternoon. First, as for the security guarantees, this is a very strong bilateral document that was mentioned at the Vilnius summit, at the G7 countries summit, and there will be a separate bilateral document with every country on security guarantees. We clearly understand what those guarantees are, because we are at war, we are at tests. So this is a security guarantees, both military and humanitarian guarantees, the reinforcement of the Ukrainian armed forces in order not to have any other attempt of any aggression by any other aggressor. Now we're talking about Russia. We are talking about the strong protection in the air and at sea. We know the areas that are usually used by the aggressor. That is the energy sector, which is also very important, and it's combined with the reinforcement of air defense. Surely you are perfectly aware of this. The protection of the energy, the protection of the infrastructure, of critical infrastructure. There's many other aspects. Then there are a number of preventive sanctions, a list of sanctions that shall be imposed against certain aggressor in case of the aggression. The teams are working, and the reason I've said about the different agreements, because you know that there are countries who can provide weapons, then there are countries who are ready to talk about the humanitarian assistance simply because they don't have a powerful armed forces or the ability to produce weaponry. That is why there will be separate agreements with separate countries. That is why the G7 countries, they are top priority, because these are the powerful countries that are able to provide the strong security guarantees. As for the peace formula, the most important task is to make sure that all the peaceful negotiations would remain focused. So we are the victim and Russia is the aggressor. We are under attack. The war is in Ukraine. That is why it is absolutely fair that the format of the peace formula was offered by Ukraine, a country which is defending its independence and fighting for its life. We have suggested a number of aspects, and we are currently working on the organization of the inauguration summit. And the big task for us is to make sure there will be as many countries from different continents as possible engaged into the formula, because that would mean that Russia and its aggression is left on itself, and there is a political isolation of the Russian Federation. This is very important. Then, on the basis of the first inauguration summit, our security advisors and diplomatic representatives will start working at different platforms on each point of the peace formula separately. There are countries who will be joining all the points. There are countries who are ready to support only certain points, and that is absolutely normal. For us, it is important to have as many countries as possible engaged. Then, all of these points will be submitted to the leaders of the nations.
Kevin Gallagher.
President Zelenskyy, did President Biden send Ukraine long-range Army tactical missile systems? And for both leaders, how concerned are you about divisions in U.S. Congress and NATO allies like Poland pulling military support for Ukraine and getting Ukraine the support it needs? Prime Minister, in French and English, please, and what can Canada do in that respect with allies?
Excuse me, can you repeat the second part of your question? The first was about the weapon.
Correct.
And the United States. And the second part, can you repeat, please?
Sure, no problem. How concerned are you with divisions in U.S. Congress, with some recent divisions amongst NATO allies like Poland, in terms of getting Ukraine the military aid it needs as quickly as it needs. And I'm wondering if you think Canada can play a role to encourage allies.
Thank you. We are grateful to the United States. And with all due respect to all of our allies, United States provide the largest share of assistance, and the assistance that our soldiers on the battlefield, on the front line, really need at this moment. So we are discussing all the different types of weapons, long range weapons and artillery shells with a caliber of 155 millimeters, then air defense systems. Therefore, we have a comprehensive discussion and the work with the United States at different levels. We have cooperation at the level of security advisors, at the level of ministers of defense, and at our level, that's a separate bilateral kind of relations at the level of presidents. I believe that the majority of what has been discussed yesterday with President Biden, I think, will be able to reach the agreements. Yes, it is a matter of time. Not everything depends on Ukraine. There's different processes, I have to say, frankly. The sooner, the less people will lose. This is the fact. As for the assistance to Ukraine, we are working with all the states. I understand that Russia, on its side, is spreading disinformation, it's spreading its narratives all around the place. It works with the societies. It's trying to influence the politicians, the public institutions, with different political parties, different NGOs, with many from different countries of the world. They are working very hard. They are investing billions into that. This is a fact. This is in order to divide Europe, divide the United States, and divide the whole world. They have a significant influence. They keep influencing the African continent. They constantly working with Latin American countries. Well, they're spending a lot of efforts, a lot of attention, a lot of money for that. It's hard to tackle that. That is why the long war, that is why they're working long on that. Our task as Ukraine, and this is something that I would like to address to our Canadian friends and to you journalists, you are the weapons capable of uniting the society. And just as today we've talked with Justin about this, I really want the Prime Minister to help us with that. I'm confident that he can do that, because Canada has powerful relationship with many countries of the world. We cannot let Russia divide the opinions in the world. They're doing that. Now, if the opinions will be divided, if the unity will be broken, this powerful unity that we've managed to acquire in the beginning of the war, then there could be no support for Ukraine. That's a fact.
As you all know, Canada has been very, very active in supporting Ukraine directly with humanitarian support, military support, financial and economic support. But we've also been very, very active on the world stage. Canada is one of the most interconnected countries in the world. Members of the G7, of the G20, the Commonwealth, the Organization of American States, of La Francophonie, of APEC, of so many different gatherings in which we have been unequivocal in standing not just up for Ukraine and encouraging others to stand alongside us, but in ensuring that people understood that this is not just a matter of a war in Eastern Europe that might not matter to people across the global south, but it is a contract that does matter around the world. Yes, because of food prices, because of energy prices, because of the geopolitical instability that Russia is creating with its illegal invasion, but also because the matter of sovereignty, of territorial integrity, of the rule of law must and does matter to all countries around the world. So Canada has been incredibly active alongside Ukraine in all the moments where Vladimir has appeared at various summits to stand up for Ukraine and stand up for the rule of law. but also in summits like the most recent G20, where Volodymyr wasn't able to be joining us, Canada spoke clearly and strongly and worked to convene partners. We will do this because we are a country that always stands up against the rule of law. And as Volodymyr said, the propaganda, the misinformation, the disinformation that Russia is aggressively spreading throughout our democracies is something that we have to counter with facts, with values, and with the kind of strength and solidarity that will see us through these difficult times.
Canada has always been there for Ukraine. At the bilateral level, we're there with military assistance, humanitarian assistance, financial assistance, but we are also there on the world stage, standing up unequivocally for Ukraine's sovereignty, but also the principles of sovereignty and territorial integrity that are essential to the proper functioning of all of our countries. We have and we will continue to be there to underline how much this conflict impacts us all. We must all stand by the UN Charter, law and order, and stability and prosperity that the world has known for 75 years, that has been broken by Russia and its illegal actions. Canada will continue to be there for Ukraine and for the rule of law.
Thank you. Next question, Maxim.
Okay, Prime Minister, Mr. President, thank you for taking the questions. So I also have a question for both of you. So for the Prime Minister, are you concerned that the recent published report by the American Department of the Treasury ranks Canada 8th in the world regarding the number of suspected arms evasions by local companies? The regime be strengthened in order to deter this type of activity? And for the President,
recently, some of the Western partners mentioned the need for running elections in Ukraine in accordance to the terms, and the Constitution prohibits the elections during the martial law period. Do you have any pressure from Canada on the need to have elections next year, and whether Canada is ready to support that?
Canada is one of the countries that has stepped up the quickest and the most comprehensively on sanctioning those responsible for this illegal war, Putin and all his cronies and the people who've profited from it, whether they be in Russia or Belarus or elsewhere. We will continue. We've sanctioned about 2,700 people and entities, and we will continue to. We are constantly working to strengthen, to coordinate with our allies to make sure that these sanctions have the right impact on the people responsible for this war, while ensuring that they are not harming people in the global south who are facing food insecurity or energy insecurity. That is the role that Canada continues to play, to highlight that Russia is and is responsible alone for the food and energy crisis that so many people around the world are facing right now. Okay.
Canada is one of the strongest countries in terms of sanctions against the Russians and others who are involved, who are profiting from the...
My Sue is muted. So is it Russia's fault that our gas prices are so high now? Really?
This illegal war. We will, of course, continue to work with our allies, with our partners, to ensure that these sanctions hit as hard as possible, while ensuring that we are not hurting the most vulnerable around the world who are suffering because of this war by Russia, especially in terms of the price of food and energy.
I didn't know that.
Thank you for the question. First, Canada is not pressing, and we have a warm relationship, really. You should not press. You can raise the issue, but not press.
Well, tell me what to do, asshole.
Secondly, the team of the Prime
You're a
Minister, we
comedian.
haven't raised the issue of elections because it's not topical issue considering the security aspects. You were right to mention that the law prohibits the elections at the time of the martial law period, but I'm ready. But the security is a very complicated aspect of running the elections. The first complexity is to have the elections in a democratic and transparent manner. For that, we need independent observers from different countries of the world. How it's usually done in Ukraine, in a democratic and
countries of the
transparent manner,
world?
just as it was
That's
during the previous
ridiculous.
elections. Now, the second question, how to give a chance to vote for the people located on the temporarily occupied territories. I'm not talking about the territories occupied in 2014. I'm talking about those territories that were occupied after the 24th of February. Now, this is a complicated matter. We need to think of that. Then third, a lot of Ukrainians, not hundreds of thousands, but millions of Ukrainians are abroad, and how to organize the voting process for them. It's a difficult matter from the standpoint of infrastructure, and at this point, there is no answer at that. As for the funding, we are currently saying that in Ukraine, which is absolutely fair, the society is responding harsh whenever the parliament or the government is willing to, to allocate money to a certain direction which is different from weapons. I mean, the society is not ready to support that. And the society is, in fact, is absolutely against that because we are at war. And everyone thinks, what sort of elections are you kind of thinking about? But this topic is raised, so we need to get ready, to be ready for this topic. And the last, but not the least, I think the largest complication, it's the military, because we have 1 million of soldiers. And, I mean, how they're going to vote while in the trenches.
What do you mean? They get mail.
How they will be
Dude,
able to
fuck
visit
you with that
the
dumb
polling
shit.
stations close to the front line. So everything should be organized in the bomb shelters.
figure it out.
We know Russia because they will simply open fire at all the
He
people
doesn't
who
want
will
there
be
to be
coming
an
to
election, dude.
the elections. And I mean, will you be able to find the observers ready to go to the trenches and to make sure there is a transparent elections? Unfortunately, we don't have an online voting in Ukraine.
And the
Now,
government,
speaking of military, you have to.
his government doesn't want him to either, because he's making them tons of money right now, right? Here's the thing: a lot of their money they're getting from us isn't going towards the war; it's going towards government pensions and like their government workers that they're keeping on staff. Who knows who the hell they still have on staff, right?
Understand, this is the largest kind of unfairness because the people who are protecting the rights and liberties of the citizens won't have a chance to vote. I mean, that's nonsense. Therefore, we have to think about this. We have to, if everything will succeed, then we can do the elections.
Like, here's the thing: none of the people want them to be there to be elections. You get it? Because they're all getting paid. They're all in. Like, they all have a job right now. They're at war. They don't know if they're gonna have a fucking job if they get voted out of office. Maybe they won't have a job now because there's not any jobs because their country's at war. No one in their government wants there to be an election because they're getting paid the most they've ever gotten paid before. From all this shit, from him traveling around. And you know why he's the perfect spokesman for him? Because he's a comedian actor. Of course he's going to be able to snooze and rub shoulders with people in different cultures. And dude, I feel like we're being scammed.
I'm going to ask the question in French. All good? French skills in the Parliament, but a bit more complex in here.
Mr. Trudeau, Canada has announced $650 additional million. That's $9 billion since the beginning of the war. We've seen resistance at Congress in the U.S. yesterday. Do you feel that there's a little bit of fatigue setting in, that it's become more difficult to convince people to continue to stand by Ukraine. And Mr. Zelenskyy, could I hear you on that as well?
That's a good question.
And while I'm at it, Mr.
He
Trudeau,
doesn't
on
like
India.
it.
You asked India to collaborate in the investigation. They said they haven't received anything yet. When will you provide the evidence to them? Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you. First, we all understand that this is an economically difficult time. Canadians, I'll start over. We all know that we are experiencing economically difficult times around the world. Crises have multiplied. Following the pandemic, the war in Ukraine, and Russia's illegal invasion, which has destabilized prices, the impact of climate change, we are facing very difficult times. That is why Canada, like other countries, is there to help our people, to help people get through these difficult times. But we understand that global challenges have global solutions. So that is why we are part of a group standing firm against Russia to defend Ukraine. We know that the destabilization of the global order that would happen if Russia succeeded in overthrowing the rules-based order would have a profound economic impact for people. That is why we are doing both things at the same time. We are there for Ukraine because it is the right thing to do for Ukrainians, but also because it is the right thing to do for Canadians. And we are there for Canadians at the same time. I understand that in all countries around the world, there are more and more complex budgetary situations. That is why we are looking at ways to directly help Ukraine with money from Russia. The Central Bank of Russia has $200 to $300 billion in assets, mainly in Europe and the United States. But today we've announced a working group to look at how we can use that money, put it to work to help Ukrainians who are suffering because of Russia. So we will continue to be innovative, to be present in standing up for Ukraine, and we will also be resolute that it is in the economic interest of Canada and even Canadians to continue to be present with everything it takes for as long as it takes so that Russia is not victorious.
Okay. We know this is a difficult time right now for all Canadians, for people around the world. The impact of climate change and extreme weather events, the hangover from the pandemic, and indeed the direct impact on food prices and energy prices linked to Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine means that people are having a hard time. And that's why we're stepping up as a country to support our citizens, but that's also why we recognize that global problems have global solutions. And we will continue to be there to ensure that Russia does not emerge victorious. Because the impact a Russian victory, which isn't just a victory over Ukraine, but would be an overthrowing of the rules-based order that has led to unprecedented prosperity and opportunity for people around the world over 75 years. If Russia were to win, Canadians in their daily lives, in their grocery bills, in the opportunities they have for the future, would be directly impacted. So we will continue to be there with as much as it takes for as long as it takes. But that's also, this financial context is why we are looking very carefully at how we can ensure that Russia itself is paying for the devastation they're causing in Ukraine. We've announced today a working group we'll look to create to see if things like Russian central bank assets, which total $200 or $300 billion in Europe and in the United States primarily, could be set to actually support Ukraine in this fight and indeed help over the long term to restore the prosperity and peace for the people of Ukraine.
Thank you for the question. I believe the Prime Minister has covered all the details for your question. I don't think I will be able to complement his answer, but some of the aspects very briefly. I believe that you're supporting either Ukraine or Russia. There's no mediators in this war. By weakening the support of Ukraine, you're reinforcing Russia and powerful Russia. And what can you expect of it? I think the history and the historic books and the witnesses has gave all the answers necessary. That's it. If someone wants to take a risk, okay, now weaken the support to Ukrainians. But should I be absolutely frank, in case of freedom, democracy, and human rights, you need to fight for those. That's a fact. And money. Yes, we are grateful to all the countries who have been helping us with weapons, with money, and who continues to do so. But this is not the most important. The most important is that the largest price. This is something that Ukraine is paid, because we are paying with the lives of our people. So we are grateful for your support. Thank you.
Yeah, but we aren't, so we don't have to, like, you know what I mean? You're
The
you know what I mean?
question on India.
I don't give a fuck if your country is communist, fucker. Be communist. I don't give a shit. North Korea is the way it is. They can be the way they are. Be the way you. Why do we have to pay for you wanting to be some other way? It's like how we have to pay for the trannies and shit, dude.
I just want to simply say that we've shared those allegations, those credible allegations, with India.
You want to be a fucking democratic country? Why don't you have what it takes to be able to keep your borders controlled and not get invaded? How about that?
We are working with our partners.
Asshole.
And what we are asking is for India to commit constructively with Canada to establish the facts on this situation. We're there to work with them, and we have been for weeks now.
In regards to India, Canada has shared the credible allegations that I talked about on Monday with India. We did that many weeks ago.
I hope Germany
and
does.
We are
dude.
there to work constructively with India, and we hope that they engage
no,
with
actually,
us
because
so
then
that we
we'll
can
just
get
give
to the
them
bottom
more,
of this
probably.
very serious matter.
Right.
Merci beaucoup tout le monde.
Merci beaucoup. C'est ce qui conclut la conférence.
Thank you. This concludes our conference.
America will just step in and help out more. On it. I was just looking at the numbers of what countries have been given the most. Apparently, EU has given the most as a whole. Here's what I'm looking at. See, we got EU institutions have given, but it's mostly been in financial aid commitments. So we have given the most for military aid. Germany's second. So Germany backs out, then they're going to be getting a lot less for military aid. Canada doesn't get much in the grand scheme of things, really. They're way the fuck down here. Japan, a small ass island of Japan gives more than Canada. That's saying a lot, actually. An island country gives more than Canada. Look at that, Canadians. Do you see that? You should be ashamed of yourself. You're massive. All them natural resources. You should get more. Look, Japan even takes more refugees than you guys do. Wow. Wow, Canada. I thought you were doing something today until I looked at this list. Government support, America #1. But as you can see here, all this military aid is regular government support, EU #1. Oh. Committed versus dispersed. Committed budgetary support. Well, those colors aren't on there. These are different colors than these. Switzerland has the most data transparency. Why are we so far down the list on data transparency? Why aren't we transparent? We're half as transparent as Switzerland and the EU with where the money's going. The fuck is that? Huh? Sorry for the F word. More proper.
Nearly 9,000 migrants have crossed the southern border in just the past day. And a reminder of just how dangerous crossing over can be. A 3-year-old boy and another person died this week while trying to cross the Rio Grande River into Texas. We have live team coverage of this border crisis with reports covering the situation from the Texas border to Chicago and New York City. But we want to begin with national correspondent John Moan. He's live in Eagle Pass, Texas. John, what is the situation there on the ground this morning?
The numbers have tapered off substantially, but we have made video of a group of about 40 people waiting just on the other side of that train bridge you see behind me. They are staging there, and they're seeking a gap in all of the concertina wire that the state has put down so they can present themselves to the Border Patrol. Federal authorities saying that the uptick in these crossings is due to a disinformation campaign being spread by the cartels, as well as people becoming more desperate as they're waiting for appointments on the CBP One app, and they're deciding to take a gamble and not wait for the app to work for them. They're crossing illegally and taking their chances.
In El Paso, Texas, more arrivals of undocumented migrants daily. The same goes about 500 miles away down the Rio Grande and Eagle Pass. The reason, says the Border Patrol, migrants are being fed disinformation by cartel-controlled smugglers to cross now.
They're making money with the immigrants. They're making money with the drugs. So, yeah, they jumped at it real fast. And I know this because we have smugglers coming from Houston, Florida, Austin, everywhere to pick up those immigrants. There's a connection there.
The Maverick County Sheriff, whose county encompasses the border town, echoing the Border Patrol's conclusions. The town declared a state of emergency, begging for the state to help cope with the volume of people crossing the river after nearly 6,000 people crossed in 2 days.
We're expending a lot of funds just to get everything under control, so we need the help from our federal and state partners.
The state deploying more razor wire in the riverbanks, and with the local emergency in effect, the mayor telling us troopers have the power to arrest migrants for trespassing in public parks. The mayor says he'll be meeting with officials on the Mexican side in Piedras Negras to find out how many more migrants may try to cross in the next week.
I'm getting numbers of anywhere from 5,000 to 9,000 people that are in Mexico ready to cross into Eagle Pass tomorrow or the next couple days, which is alarming for us. We're a city of 28,000 people. We don't have the capacity or resources.
U.S. Customs and Border Protection shut down one of the international bridges and reallocated customs staff to help the processing of the mass amount of people who crossed. Many migrants are making their way northward by stowing away in Mexican freight trains. One of Mexico's largest freight rail operators, Ferromex, has halted several northbound trains because of rising concerns about the volume of people crossing. Experts say a key difference about this migration surge is that more families with children rather than single adults are migrating from Central and South America. U.S. Customs and Border Protection telling Scripps News in a written statement that human smugglers are spreading disinformation about the border to migrants and are, quote, putting migrants' lives at risk for their own financial gain. Adding, rumors circulating on social media that areas of the southwest border, specifically in the El Paso sector, are open to illegal migration are patently false. Eagle Pass's mayor says politicians on both sides of the aisle need to consider humanitarian concerns.
A 4-year-old drowned and died. Today you had an adult male that drowned in the river. That is sad. Nobody wants to see people suffer, right? That's the last thing that you want to see. But just logistically, a city like Eagle Pass cannot handle this situation.
So don't let them in.
Information to report just about.
Did you say no? Go away. You can't come in here.
In the state and the militarization of this area. A couple of days ago, Governor Greg Abbott of Texas angrily tweeted that Border Patrol agents had cut some of the concertina wire against his wishes. But I learned there was good reason for that. There were families struggling in the river, and as I understand, 2 Border Patrol agents apprehended and moved those families away from the water. They cut the razor wire to access the area, consistent with federal immigration law, and they took the group safely into custody. They put the health and safety of their workforce, but also the migrants, especially when conditions are dangerous and people are vulnerable, they put their health and safety at the top.
We should build a bridge for them.
Such a troubling situation. National correspondent John Moan in Eagle Pass, Texas.
You know what? Why don't we just fly them from Venezuela into our country? Oh, I know, because they're not even in Venezuela. They're already living in other countries with decent lives, with jobs, and they hear, hey, you mean I could be doing a hell of a lot better than I am in, I don't know, wherever the hell they are at that point, Mexico, if I just get to America now? I can, yeah, and I've saved up a little bit while working here because it ain't too bad here. So yeah, I'm gonna try it out. And they come out here, they throw away their new passport or the new information from wherever they moved to, and they show their Venezuelan shit. And they're like, yeah, I just left Venezuela. Kind of shit happen and do. That's when they're throwing away their IDs. Anthony's finding a bunch of IDs that people are discarding because they're becoming their old selves, even though they found new lives in safe countries or safer countries that were considered much safer than Venezuela. It doesn't pay as much in that country, so they continue their voyage and claim that they've been in Venezuela all this time. It's fucked up. But we can't bring them straight from Venezuela because they're not actually in Venezuela. A lot of them.
the Eagle Pass area. But look, everybody talks about, the border. You can send more personnel, you can do certain things, but that's playing defense on the 1-yard line. If we don't play defense on their 20-yard line and extend it and have repercussions at the border, also, people are going to come in. I know that sometimes people say, well, it's seasonal. Yeah, there is an aspect of seasonality, but a lot of it has to be that, if the criminal organizations are promoting and getting people here and saying this is a time to cross, yes, these numbers are coming in. Look what's happened at the Darien Gap. I mean, there are large numbers, and we're not doing enough to stop them at their 20-yard line, and everything is being done here at the 1-yard line called the U.S.-Mexico border.
And so, Congressman, what do you see as the solution to this?
Well, look, I'm looking at the your split screen here, and I'm seeing DPS. We're seeing Border Patrol. We're seeing they're talking about sending more military folks over there. And they're just helping folks come in. I mean, look at what we're seeing right now. You got to have a policy where you actually return people back. You got to do that. Otherwise, people are going to keep coming. If you don't detain people, if you don't send people back, then the border becomes a speed bump. And what I worried about is now my counterparts on the other party, if we don't do a CR, we're going to have a shutdown. And I've talked to Border Patrol agents. I've talked to Border Patrol chiefs. They're going to keep working. And they got families. They got bills to pay. And while they're working and then this stress builds up with large numbers, it's going to be a very difficult time for our men and women in green, and we got to help them instead of having a government shutdown.
And if there is the government shutdown, as you very well state, the Border Patrol would have to continue working, even though they would not be getting paid for it because they are essential employees of the federal government. But Congressman, it's so difficult because the fact is that you have tens of thousands of people, as you accurately state, are going through the Darien Straits as we speak. And many more are on their way there. They have to do that dangerous trek through Mexico. There's not been one person that I've spoken to in the last 2 years that has gone through that tells me that the most difficult and horrendous part is going through Mexico. Is there something that could be done? You talk about the 20-yard line. All right, let's talk about the 20-yard line. Is there something that could be done with Mexico, in cooperation with Mexico, or with maybe even the Central American countries that are, the whole area there?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's playing defense on the 1-yard line. First of all, one of the things we need to do is give authorities a homeland where they can do their work outside the U.S. border. And that means a lot. Just think about the authorities that Homeland does, and then working with Mexico and working with Guatemala, Panama, Colombia. What happened to those regional border processing centers that we were supposed to set up in Panama and Colombia? And if we don't, all they're going to do is just keep coming over here. The criminal organizations know exactly what they're doing. They're saying, promoting this is a time to cross, because every time somebody crosses, depending $5,000, $8,000 an individual, the only ones that are making money are the criminal organizations. And you're right, they're coming through a very difficult time. And there's ways that we can work with those countries. We got to work with those countries. Keep in mind that, under President Obama, there was at one time that Mexico was actually stopping more people at their southern border with Guatemala than the U.S. Border Patrol was doing. That's what we need to do. Is we gotta work with those countries, and if we need to put a little pressure on Mexico and the other countries to work with us, let's go ahead and do that and get the job done. I know some of our DHS officials and headquarters, because I talked to them, they're going down to Mexico. The U.S. consulates and the embassy is talking to the Mexicans to stop those people from getting on the trains to come over here. They got to do a lot more. There's ways that we can do it, but we got to change some of the authorities and change the mindset that we play defense at the 1-yard line. Because look at your images. You can send a lot more Border Patrol agents. You can send a lot more DPS. You can send the military there. But what do they actually do when somebody hits the U.S. border? Tell me what they do. And that tells you got to have repercussions of policies and do the work outside on their 20-yard line.
That's an old one. Thanks, man. I got lazy this morning, actually. It's from back on Canadian trucker days. Oh. What about this one?
Being so narrow.
Joining me right now is Heritage Foundation Senior Fellow for China Strategy, Michael Pillsbury. Michael, great to have you. Thanks for being here. We've been questioning why the number of nationals from China are coming in increasingly, up 1,100% year over year. What is your reaction to what you just heard?
Well, it's very impressive that Congressman Mark Green would have this legislation, have co-sponsors, be ready to go. This is the kind of thing that we've been missing from both the House and the Senate, is actual legislation that is drafted and passes. I wish him well. I hope this does, in fact, pass the House and become legislation. It's so obvious, as Congressman Green points out, it's so obvious that part of a preparation for a Chinese invasion of Taiwan would be domestic activities here inside the United States. So this is going to be, Maria, I think this is going to be a test case, this piece of legislation. If we can't get anything as common sense and as logical as this passed by both houses and signed by the president, to me, Maria, it means we're in real trouble, that we just can't take action against China. We can talk about the China threat, but this example from Congressman Mark Green, along with a few others that are happening, it's really a test of our country to see if we can save ourselves from being surpassed by China. So I wish him well, and I think we ought to watch what happens to his legislation.
Really well said there, Michael. I could not agree more. It's also a test about how compromised Joe Biden is, because we know from the House Republicans he's taken in millions and millions of dollars. Will he actually pull the trigger and sign something like that? Because, you know, all of these Chinese nationals, the other thing we're finding is we're finding many of them at military sites, trying to access our military sites. Now we know that China's military is sending more than 100 fighter jets toward Taiwan repeatedly. They did so again earlier this week. A new piece in the Journal is warning that these demonstrations are no longer about sending a political message, but now the intent is to improve China's ability to encircle Taiwan, neutralize the island's natural advantages, and block the United States from helping in an event of that invasion, Michael. When would you expect something like this to take place, an invasion?
Well, we have to be ready. Sometimes our admirals and generals use the term fight tonight, which is a little melodramatic, but I think we have to be prepared. There's two different things are happening, Maria, that are in competition. The Chinese, as the Wall Street Journal, I think, correctly points out, the Chinese are practicing. This is not just a military signal to scare people. They want to see how the election goes in January. If the pro-China group wins, if Mayor Ho becomes the president of Taiwan, a huge problem goes away for Taiwan, because he's already for military detente. He wants exchanges. He wants to kind of deconflict the situation. On our side, we have no preparations. We still don't have any munitions stored on Taiwan. This is in the NDAA, but it hasn't passed yet. We don't do exercises with the Taiwan military. So while China prepares for war, at least practices these maneuvers, on our side, we don't have any counter reaction because of the one China policy being so narrowly interpreted. So this, too, is really a test to see what we can do to resist and to deter Chinese aggression. I'm getting pessimistic that our side just has handcuffs on our wrists that we cannot practice the defense of Taiwan.
Yeah, especially since we've got all of these Chinese companies in index funds and mutual funds, and some of those companies have already been sanctioned. How is it possible that we have sanctioned companies in funds, and possibly the thrift fund, which is the 401k for government employees, which is basically enabling investors to fund the expansion of communist China, of our #1 adversary?
Yes, that's right. And I think the power in this situation goes to Janet Yellen. she had the power to draft a much more restrictive executive order. You know, President Biden signed it. He does invoke an emergency and say that in the future we have to get American companies to report before they invest in high-tech sectors in China. But there's a little loophole. It doesn't go into effect for 1 year. It's a commentary period now, and it only that are explicitly investing in either AI or quantum computing. Now, almost anybody in China can say, oh, I don't do that. And then the investment will continue. And you know, Roger Robinson's numbers are $2 or $3 trillion.
That's right. And Roger Robinson is among those, many others. He was in charge of China's strategy in a past administration, but he's one of many who have called that legislation that Janet Yellen oversaw soft on China. Again, soft on China.
Ukraine has attacked Russia's Black Sea fleet in the Crimean port of Sevastopol. The governor of the Russian-occupied region has said that at least one missile has hit the Navy headquarters and urged people there to stay at home because of the possibility of a further attack. Well, these are the latest pictures from outside the main headquarters of the Black Sea Fleet. Russian news outlets have reported that residents of Sevastopol say they heard explosions and saw smoke. One serviceman is missing, that's according to the Russian Defense Ministry. Russian military installations on the Crimean Peninsula have been a frequent target since Vladimir Putin ordered the invasion of Ukraine more than 18 months ago. Well, the military analyst Sean Bell is in the studio and joins me now. Sean, hello to you.
Good afternoon, Bell.
Let's begin. We're talking about more attacks, more Ukrainian attacks on the Black Sea Fleet. Just give us an update on this latest one.
Yeah, the latest one, what we know is Russian claims they've shot down 5 missiles that were trying to attack Crimea, but at least one appears to have got through and hit the Russian Black Sea Fleet headquarters, which is actually based at Sevastopol on Ukraine, on the island of Crimea. Now, it's worth remembering that Ukraine doesn't have a navy, or doesn't now have a navy that can combat the Black Sea Fleet. So they've been forced to do asymmetric attacks, and that's why they've been using drones to attack Russian ships. They attacked the Kilo-class submarine in dry dock, and they've been doing a whole series of attacks. And now this headquarters, which is where all the senior officers are, the strategic planning for the Black Sea Fleet is done. So this will be a major impact for the Russians. Now, the Russians never admit to any damage to these sort of structures, but footage has emerged of a pretty violent blaze going on, and we've heard reports that actually the normal firefighting services has been bolstered by a whole load more emergency service. So there's a pretty intensive fire blazing there. It's a pretty intensive damage that has been done.
This isn't the first time we've talked about attacks on the Black Sea Fleet. So what picture is starting to emerge about what the Ukrainians are doing here?
Yeah, what we need to do is try and link all this stuff up. So for many months, we've been talking about Russian attacks of targets across Ukraine. And largely, yes, some of them have been attacking energy infrastructure, some of them are attacking the morale of the Ukrainian people. But there doesn't seem to be military objectives around most of this targeting. However, at the same time, Ukraine has been doing a whole series of what looks now a lot more coordinated attacks across Russian positions and in Russia itself. And let's just walk around some of those. First of all, we've looked at the Black Sea Fleet. Why they've been trying to push them further east, away from Crimea. Why are they doing that? Because the Russians desperately need logistics support that the Black Sea Fleet provides to support their forces in southern Ukraine. Likewise, Crimea, they've been attacking the actual amphibious assault on the side, also now attacks on the headquarters. Because again, Russia won't want to lose Crimea. It's a jewel in the crown, and therefore it fixes a lot of Russian forces there. If we then look around the country, Dnipro River out beside you, remember the Kharkovka dam was blown, but to stop the Russian forces being exposed on the flank. But now that's all settled down, the Ukrainians are doing regular attacks across the Dnipro. Why? It fixes Russian forces over there. We got to Bakhmut, militarily insignificant, but the Ukrainians are still trying to encircle that. That's fixed over 70,000 Russian force up there that they can't move away. And if you therefore look at fuel depots, we're out near me, there's fuel depots just behind the front line, also in Russia and in Moscow. All of those are designed to distract Russian forces. And so what's actually emerging, this is all part of a very clever, coordinated attack by the Ukrainians.
So is that the plan,
It's like a
essentially,
football
to
game.
get the Russians focused on other areas whilst they hit the Black Sea?
Well, with that comes to the nut. What the Ukrainians, the main effort has always been to try and sever the land bridge just to the east of Zaporizhia. And what we're seeing here is a little salient that they've been working at eroding. Now, unfortunately, this has been the site of some pretty substantial Russian defences. We've looked at trench lines, Dragon's Teeth, and extensive minefields. And 4 months in, that the troops have to go in first. They have to dismantle everything. Then they have to push the sides of the salient aside. That allows the armour to come through. And for the first time, we're now hearing reports that Ukrainian armour has been to the scene to the south of the Russian defensive lines. Now, if that is true, that will be the single most impressive and most decisive moment of this offensive to date, because they can then flood through armour, and then the floodgates can start to open before then. What looks likely is that President Zelenskyy briefed this to President Biden, because the package of aid that was announced wasn't generic aid. It was all aid that specifically anti-tank weapons, more tanks, more HIMARS systems, all of which are going to help specifically with this offensive. The big challenge, of course, is time. As ever, there's only 3 to 4 weeks to go before the rains arrive in this region. That will turn this area into a complete mud bath. And the danger is then, if it stalls, the Russians will entrench their positions further. We're back to square one. Or, of course, if the winter comes about, we end up with some sort of frozen conflict, both literally and metaphorically.
All right, so still lots of jeopardy here. Sean Bell, thanks very much.
He wasn't friendly and charming in the limo. He was aggressive.
And Canada has promised F-16 fighter jets. Good evening. The counter-offensive in Ukraine is into its 4th month now and has seemingly made significant progress today with an airstrike on a Russian naval base in Crimea. One person is thought to have died and a number of others were injured in the attack, which Ukraine's military says was from a cruise missile, Storm Shadow, supplied by the UK and France. Tonight, Sky News understands that the United States will send long-range missiles to Ukraine, and Canada has promised F-16 fighter jets. No doubt a successful outcome of President Zelenskyy's visit to North America this week. We'll be live in the US in just a moment. But first, our international correspondent, Alex Rossi, reports.
Damn.
This is the moment the Ukrainian strike blasted into the Black Sea Naval Headquarters in illegally occupied Crimea. The sound of explosions rocking the port city, the sky filling with thick black.
Correspondent Alex Rossi reports.
This is the moment the Ukrainian strike blasted into the Black Sea Naval Headquarters in illegally occupied Crimea. The sound of explosions rocking the port city, the sky filling with thick black smoke. Children could be seen running for cover as air raid sirens wailed. And in video posted on social media, civilians are heard speaking of explosions and rockets flying overhead. These types of attacks are increasing in tempo, and according to the Ukrainians, British and French missiles were deployed on what was a highly strategic and symbolic target. It is hard to assess how significant the damage is, but this is clearly part of an effort by Kiev to disrupt Russian military assets as it continues its counter-offensive across southern Ukraine. Along the line of contact, Ukrainian forces are trying to move forwards against heavily dug-in and fortified Russian positions. By attacking forces well behind the front lines in Crimea, the command is hoping to make it easier for soldiers on the ground to make progress.
What Ukraine's doing is that they're very unlikely to actually be able to mount a successful assault on it. What they are doing by continuously attacking Crimea is forcing Russia to protect it. They're forcing Russia to commit limited numbers of soldiers to Crimea, and that stops them being redeployed elsewhere on the battlefield.
And it's an island.
President Zelenskyy knows Ukraine is dependent on its allies for military support and cannot win the war without it. He was keen to press that point home when he met with the Prime Minister of Canada and addressed the Parliament. The country has confirmed it will provide more financial aid.
The support for Ukraine with weapons and equipment has allowed us to save thousands of lives. This includes air defense systems, armored vehicles, artillery shells.
Earlier in the week, he held meetings with President Biden, who's now agreed to supply new long-range missiles. But Zelenskyy is aware political support is becoming more difficult, despite the promises and smiles in Washington. On the ground, there is slow progress in some areas along the front line, but there are no signs of a major breakthrough in what is becoming an unending war. Alex Rossi, Sky News.
Let's get more now from our US correspondent in Washington, D.C., Mark Stone. Mark, seemingly a successful trip to both Canada and the United States of America for President Zelenskyy, but the war still rages on.
Yeah, and that's the nub of it, that point that Alex made at the end of his report. An unending war. Where does it end? How does it end? Those were the difficult questions that President Zelenskyy did get while he was here in Washington through the course of the day yesterday, that he would have got in Ottawa, up in Canada again today. He is getting the support he needs now. He is getting the weaponry he needs now. He's got it from Canada, as we heard today. He got it as well from the United States. Confirmation from President Biden that tanks that were asked for back in January, the most sophisticated tank in the world, they will now be supplied this week, we are told, to Ukraine. They can't be used very effectively at the moment because they require maneuverability, and there isn't much on the front line. We've also been told, sources have confirmed to me that that longer-range missiles will be made available to Ukraine. This is something they've absolutely wanted for a very long time. These are missiles that are fired from the ground, not from the air, like those that were used against Sevastopol today. Because they are fired from the ground, they can be fired much nearer to the front line into Russian-occupied territory. So they are more effective and they have a heavier payload as well. All of this is good news. But the other thing that President Zelenskyy will have felt here in the United States, without question, is the issue of time. He knows that right now President Biden is behind him, that most of the politicians in that building there are behind him as well. But politics is local, and he knows that things could change really quite quickly here in the United States over the course of the next year. And so I think they're trying to front load Ukraine with weapons now to try and get that job done and get it done quickly. But they don't have a roadmap to peace at the moment, and that's what everyone wants.
Mark, thank you. A woman who had a sexual relationship with Russell Brand.
Whoa. Families frustrated over constant. This is Memphis. Oh my God. I should move back. Parents complain about numerous fights at junior high in West Memphis.
I know I'm withdrawing my daughter from this school because there's too much going on.
A concerned mother who does not want to be identified believes this vicious fight could have been avoided if the school administration would have listened.
I got a call from my daughter saying she was finna get jumped, so she called me crying. I came up here, talked to the principal, but nothing was done about it. The next day, I get a call around 9 saying my daughter got the fight.
She says her daughter was suspended for 10 days after the fight. The students attend New Wonder Junior High School. The brawl, which was recorded by other students, occurred during school hours in a classroom.
School is the place where the kids come to learn, come together to learn something, not to come fight.
But what really bothers this mother is how the teacher broke up the brawl.
He pushed her too hard to where she really could have had some type of damage or hurt herself. And they still ain't did nothing about it. I done did a report.
Parents say,
dude, neither one of the kids were listening to the teacher. That's the main problem. They were both just continuing. He was probably telling them to quit, and they were just, I mean, maybe you should put hands on him sooner.
It's not the first fight on campus this year. Several parents we spoke with claims fights are happening every day.
And we didn't fight in front of teachers when I was a kid, dude. Maybe he wasn't in a room or something. You know what I mean? It probably wasn't. There's no way. I mean, I didn't do that. Always the teacher would need to be out of the room. You didn't just start punching somebody with the teacher in the room, dude. Nobody did that shit. Dude, that's retarded. That's like breaking the law in front of the police officer.
Their school was already bad. Wanda wasn't nothing like that.
Wonder Junior High and East Junior High merged this year and moved into a new building. Parents say that's when the fighting became a bigger problem.
They really shouldn't combine Wanda and East. They should have left it how it was, because East was on the north side and Wanda was on the south side, and them kids just don't get along at all.
Now, do you think there'll be another fight again today?
That's fucking retarded. Anybody who doesn't know what West Memphis is? It's in Arkansas. As you can see, West Memphis, Arkansas. It's not actually in Memphis. It's on the other side of the Mississippi River. Okay? So Memphis got gangs. Memphis is rough. West Memphis, I don't know, and they got a bunch of poverty, kind of. So maybe they got some wannabe gangs out there or some shit. So them having some north-south beef in middle school and junior high, bro, that's laughable. Because she's like, yeah, they just don't get along. These north and south, yeah, we gotta keep them separated. What? But she's feeding into it.
Yeah,
the mother believes it's going to take several board meetings to come up with a plan to combat the fighting.
They need to get to the bottom of it.
In West Memphis, Jessica Knotts, WRG News, Channel 3.
Junior high, no respect. Uh-huh. There is search underway after several suspects flee during traffic stop in Texas. A bunch of illegals. They're probably murderers in the countries they fled from, just got loose in America, or what? They've probably been deported from here before, just got loose out here? Probably. I mean, go on. You're bugging the shit out of me, dude. Shit. Man, it's been all morning today. I tried playing. I tried everything. He just wants to meow. Yo, I never knew this dude. Yo, check this out. Track's got some of these in the shop.
So the question for me is, we've got, this is 36,500 plus carats. That's what we could remember, 37.
Yes.
What is this stone?
This is a smoky topaz.
A smoky topaz.
But it's called a jacaranda because of the nature of the scales of the topaz.
And what is the jacaranda? What is that? Is that French or?
That's in Portuguese.
Oh, in Portuguese. And what does that translate to?
Alligator.
Alligator. So that's really what this topaz is about. How long did it take to carve it into the skull?
About 30 days.
30 days. And there's not a lot of people in the world that really do this. I'm sure there's some in different countries, but in New York City, it'd probably be
the only one.
The only one, right. Those smoky topazes over there?
Yes.
So this is, you know, I guess gemstone quality. Oh, this is a citrine.
Well, it's the same family.
Okay, same family.
You could go right there.
That's the smoky topaz. Yeah. So this is what people usually see and usually get when they are getting a topaz like that. Is this rare to find a big chunk like this, or is it more or less, it's out there?
No, it's out there, but you know the carving is the detail of it because we made the carving to fit the type of design of the piece.
Right. This is so essentially because of that. It's
I want to know
really
about these over here.
Yes.
Actually,
Is this topaz as well, or is this quartz?
This is well, same family.
Yeah, same family. Right?
But then this one has a black tourmaline inside.
he did all these though.
Oh, so that's what's in the head right here.
He doesn't have any
Let me bring
old
one more out.
ones.
We just
Okay, cool. So all natural gemstones, all hand carved. And this is another crystal skull.
So valuable in one piece, so beautiful.
I mean, this is nothing and nothing like it in the world. And then you have another crystal skull right here. Put this in the back. And this one is really polished, to be honest. But you love skulls, is that what it is? Is that your specialty or something?
No, this is something I made for someone, and that's what's coming out.
Oh, okay.
Dude, supposedly the crystal skulls. I thought these were old ass ones, but they're not. Oh look. Oh, look at the Indiana Jones one. You know what I'm saying? The crystal skulls. I thought they had one like of the old ass skulls, man. The archaeologists have been finding. Oh, like they were fake? Maybe they were fake. I didn't know. This is the first I heard about this. Oh, this is a pretty recent article. There were no real crystal skulls. Really? They're all fake. Never mind. Damn, I didn't know, man. Well, that blows that theory out of the water because I guess recently they figured out how crystals can store memory, and I thought maybe there was data inside the skulls, but probably not.
Okay, thank you. One of the suspects, but he's in the ambulance, so I don't know. I think there's only one left they're looking for. So you said I can leave after that? Okay. Okay, and then where do you want me to go? out. Okay, thank you.
I don't know about that liquid DNA. Huh? It's high NYC. Oh, it's a different one. Dude, go away, Simon. Holy shit, man. He's being very insistent. I don't know what for either. Just meow, 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 meow. I think he sees me put these on. He sees these on my head and knows that, or hears me put these on or something. That's where it starts. He knows as long as these are on my head, he can bug the shit out of me, and I'll take it because I don't like give him everything he wants or give him away from me because I don't hardly hear it. It bugs me when he keeps doing it for like a minute straight. It just starts getting louder and louder. Meow, 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 meow. Oh man. Oh, who's this?
Well, welcome back. A recent Fox News poll shows inflation is the #1 issue for voters right now, with over 90% saying that they are concerned about inflation. That same poll finds nearly 80% say that the condition of the economy is only fair or poor. Joining me right now is the 2024 presidential candidate, former South Carolina governor, and former UN ambassador, Nikki Haley. Ambassador, it's great to see you. Thanks very much for being here.
Thanks so much, Maria.
Well, congratulations on your move in the polls. Obviously, people are recognizing your plans as they are fearful about the economy. You're about to deliver an economic speech in Manchester, New Hampshire, later this morning. Can you tell us what you want to communicate and your vision for the economy right now?
Well, Maria, you know, I'm not a lawyer, I'm an accountant, and so I know the importance of economic strength. And the way that you get economic strength is not doing what Joe Biden has done, which has sent us down this rabbit hole of socialism. All that does is dole out money, and so in efforts to go and have government control your lives. And so what we're going to do is we're going to strengthen the middle class again. Socialism makes the wealthy more wealthy and makes the poor more poor. What we want to do is strengthen the middle class. And the way we're going to do that is first focus on how we can put more money in their pocket. Let's cut their income taxes and condense the brackets of the income taxes so that they can get more money. Let's eliminate the federal gas and diesel tax so that inflation's not burdening them so much. And let's focus on getting rid of any distorted tax rules that play favorites, like the state and local tax deduction, which it only takes from low tax states, but it gives to the wealthy in big tax states. And let's make sure that we put those small business tax cuts and make them permanent. They made the corporate tax cuts permanent, but they didn't do it for small businesses. Small businesses are the heartbeat of our economy. Once we get that cash back into the pockets of our middle class, then let's focus on inflation, debt, and spending. And when we do that, we'll talk about ways of getting that down, and then we will go to economic freedom. How do we go and free us up? Let's reduce the programs at the federal government. Let's send it down to the states. That way you're reducing the size of the federal government and you're strengthening the people on the ground. We've got multiple plans to do this. We're really excited. And the strength of an good economic policy is a strong dollar and a strong middle class.
Well, and this is all national security, I would argue. Economic security is national security. But, you know, I'm glad you mentioned making the federal government smaller, because I think one of the strengths, if you will, of the Trump presidency was what he did around regulation. You know, you can talk about tax and spend, which are really important, but when you have this big brother telling corporations, telling individuals that there are new rules to follow, it handicaps them. CEOs and managers of businesses do not have the vision, and they won't put new money to work in CapEx and in all sorts of investments. And right now, you've got SEC Chairman Gary Gensler doing closed-door meetings, ensuring that he's got all his SEC rules in place for the climate change agenda, Nikki. So what are you going to do about this climate change agenda that is forcing corporate America to identify what their risks are for climate change and pay up for it?
Well, we're going to pull back the $500 billion in green subsidies that Biden has put in place. We're going to make sure we're energy dominant and stop demonizing producers. We're going to pass the REINS Act, which Kat Kammack and Rand Paul have put in place. And basically, it would say any rule or regulation that costs the taxpayers more than $100 million, Congress needs to vote up or down on it. We're going to start putting things in place that really give the taxpayers control, not special interests, but the taxpayers. And when we do that, that's when we're going to start to see that economic strength.
Well, you also made a comment to me in one of our interviews a couple of months ago, and I just thought it was so spot on. It was about E-Verify, right? I mean, look, we just saw 10,000 people come through the border on Wednesday alone. This border is out of control. I thought your idea about E-Verify was one of the best ideas. Can you walk us through it? And are you still committed to that?
Absolutely. I passed one of the toughest illegal immigration laws in the country when I was governor of South Carolina, and we did an E-Verify. What we want to do to stop this bleeding at the border is to make sure that we go and do a national E-Verify, where companies have to prove that everyone they hire is here legally. Let's make sure we defund sanctuary cities once and for all. Let's put 25,000 more Border Patrol and ICE agents on the ground and let them do their job, Maria, because right now they're not being allowed to do it. Let's stop catch and release, and let's go to catch and deport. And let's go back to the Remain in Mexico policy. The idea that 5.5 million illegal immigrants have crossed that border is a dereliction of duty by Joe Biden. It's unconscionable that he would put Americans at risk this way. And we've got to put an end to it. And he's not going to be able to do this anymore. Kamala Harris isn't going to be able to do this anymore. What happened at Eagle Pass is irresponsible. You had 10,000 people come to a community of 30,000. How are they supposed to even handle that? It's a safety issue.
Well, it's unbelievable, actually. By the way, you just mentioned Kamala Harris. The other day on CNN, she says she's perfectly ready to take over should Joe Biden step down.
Well, I mean, the plan of the Democrats is Joe Biden's going to win this election and then hand it over to Kamala. That's why a vote for Joe Biden is a vote for Kamala Harris. That's who I'm running against, is Kamala Harris. And if you think she's going to take care of the border, she was the border czar. Look at what she's done. Now Biden's put her in charge of gun violence.
Nice teeth, though.
There's no telling how the freedom she's going to want to take away from us. She was supposed to be in charge of artificial intelligence. Every other country has handled it but us. We can't afford Kamala Harris. And I have said it over and over again. The thought of Kamala Harris as president of the United States, we will lose our country. We can't let that happen. That's why we have to have a new generational leader that goes into the primary and comes out of the general a winner.
There's no way Biden gets back in all this.
We are watching an economy and a country that is in decline. I don't think there's any secret about that at this point, Ambassador. These last 2.5 years have hurt the American people under Joe Biden. But you've got great ideas is, at the end of the day, nothing gets done if the government is shut down, if we have run out of money, and that is where we find ourselves today. So what's your advice to the Republicans right now who are fighting? You've got one guy, Matt Gaetz, trying to take out Kevin McCarthy. You've got somebody else saying, no, we're not going to sign anything if there's any money attached to Ukraine. You've got others who are saying, I don't care what we cut, we got to cut. What do they do?
Well, first of all, Maria, Congress has one main job, and that is to produce a budget on time. Do you know Congress has only produced 4 budgets on time in 40 years? That's a disservice to the taxpayer. Do we need to cut spending? We absolutely need to cut spending. Do they need to figure out how? They absolutely need to figure out how. But I'll tell you the way the taxpayers can figure out how. It's why we need term limits in Congress. No more of dealing with these shutdowns. Cut the spending, cut the debt, stop the borrowing, and let's get things back on track. That's what I'm going to do when I'm your president. We're going to change the tone from the top down. You don't get to talk about things. You have to do things for the American people. We're tired of watching the back and forth and not seeing any action to go along with it.
Dude, our term limit is dangerous though, because they might go ham on their last year and start doing all kinds of dumb shit. But they're like, hey, it's my last year, who cares?
Well, we definitely need term limits. I agree with that. But I asked Joni Ernst about that the other day, and she said not only do we need term limits for the elected officials, we need term limits for the staff.
Tuesday.
Because there is something called the deep state and the swamp that is real. Do you agree with that?
I'm just being devil's advocate with that one, because like I've wanted term limits too, because it's like, man, we got people in office for so long, it's like they're kings or something in office all their life. But yeah, like what if they knew that they had like only 4 years, and that last year they're like, well, it's my last year, boys, time to act a little crazy with my voting. Who gives a shit, right? Because they continually want to keep their job, so it makes them want to do what the people want them to do, because that last year isn't their last year unless the people say it's their last year. But now it'll be last year no matter what. Oh, wow.
Around the elected officials should have term limits as well?
Absolutely. And what I've proposed is that all federal bureaucrats should never sit in a position for longer than 5 years. We should rotate them. That makes for a better employee, and it also keeps us from having any power
that could backlash.
in any of those agencies. That's how we'll clean that out.
You're right. All right.
If they know that they're fucking 60-something years old and they can't run again for office for 5 years or ever, possibly, maybe they get a little stupid, because they're getting a little stupid with their age already, and they're like, well, fuck it, dude, I'm gonna go out with a bang then.
It's hugely important for you, Nikki. We are less than a week away from the second GOP debate hosted by Fox Business right here. We are all going to be watching a brand new Fox Business poll shows.
I've never even heard of this lady till right now.
Iowa, putting you in the top.
She's nowhere near about to win the presidency, dude.
18% of Republican primary voters say that you are their preference. That's second behind Donald Trump at 46%. Tell us your plans. How are you preparing for this debate next week? What are you going to do?
We're not ready for a woman president.
Well, you know, I've done 85 events in New Hampshire and Iowa, not counting the events we've done in South Carolina. And I will tell you, the town halls where we let them ask any question, we stay there, we shake every hand. I'm the last person to leave. That's the best debate prep you can get, because they pepper you with questions all the time, and you get to listen to what they care about, and I get to give them the solutions I want to put forward. And so I love debates. It's a great opportunity for the American people to see what their options are, and you know, we look forward to another one.
Yeah, that is great. Well, tell me this. The other day I was reading that you said Donald Trump is weak in the knees. Weak in the knees is not how most people would look at Donald Trump, given his toughness and bravado that we've seen over the last couple of years. Why is he weak in the knees, Nikki?
Well, look, I think he was the right president at the right time. I agree with a lot of his policies. I don't think he's the right president to go forward. He was strong when it came to foreign policy, and we've watched him get weak on Ukraine. We've watched the fact that he wants to go and just allow Russia to eat up Ukraine. That's not something we want to see. He had multiple spending issues. I mean, the reason we're in all this debt is we had $8 trillion under his watch. I think that he wasn't strong enough on what we needed to do to get our economic situation inflation in place. I think he was incredibly strong when it came to trade with China, but he missed all the opportunities to really get that infiltration out of China, whether it's the fentanyl flow, whether it's the fact that they, are stealing our intellectual property, the idea that they can, they're now putting a spy center up in Cuba. There was too much that China was allowed to get away with, and now Putin's trying to get away with the same thing. We need an America that's strong, and I think he got weak in the knees on that. There were things he was strong on, but there were things that I think he could have been a lot stronger on.
Well, I know that you were really tough on China when you were UN ambassador. You were incredibly impressive there, and I know you have a handle on that issue. But let me get your take as this final question on Ukraine. Because, look, you've got congressmen right now saying, I am not going to sign one piece of legislation. No way if any money, more money is committed to Ukraine. We've already sent, what, 113
They're trying to include it into our military budget, dude. That's the problem. That's what's going on right now. Okay, just so everybody knows, it's in Congress, and they're trying to put the military budget for next year into place, and they're including Ukraine into our military budget. And a lot of people aren't happy with that. They want it to be its own thing, which I can understand that.
$1 billion. How much can we spend further in Ukraine? Is this like unlimited?
Well, first of all, I don't think you should ever give straight up cash to any country. I think we should give them the equipment and the ammunition they need with our allies. But the way we have to look at this is America can never be so arrogant, Maria, that we don't think we need friends. Here was a freedom-loving, pro-American country that was invaded. What we have done, the money that you're talking about, is only 3.5% of our defense budget. If you look at percentage of GDP, the 11 European countries have done more than us. That's a small price to pay to know we are preventing war.
11 European countries have done better than us combined. She should have said that. Not individually. Combined, they do better than us. The EU should be doing better than us combined. They're neighboring countries to Ukraine. They're right there. It's in their backyard. What the fuck you mean, lady? Dude, she's definitely not going to be president because the Republicans aren't going to fucking like what she's spewing. She's running a Republican card. Going to try to. The primaries ain't going to happen, lady.
A combat veteran. I don't want our military to go to war.
Wait, she's a combat veteran? What? Combat? What kind of combat, lady?
European countries have done more than us.
I'm looking into it.
That's a small price to pay to know we are preventing war. I'm the wife of a combat veteran.
Oh,
I don't
never mind.
Want our military to go to war. Putin has said once he takes Ukraine, Poland and the Baltics are next. Those are NATO countries, and that would put us at war. We are trying to prevent war. 3.5%, let's be realistic about it. I would much rather Congress realize you're letting all these special interests get these things. You're not cutting spending. You're not cutting the debt. You're letting inflation get out of control. There's a lot of things you could be paying attention on. Leave our national security alone. Let us go and continue to prevent war, and you work on the economic strength of Middle America.
Well, let me tell you, it's going to be a lot of areas that we're worried about war. We've got Chinese nationals flowing into the wide open border right now, up 1,100% year over year. And I spoke with the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee the other day, Mark Green, who said, yeah, that's all directed by Xi Jinping. He wants to put these people in place so when he's ready to turn the guns on America, he's got saboteurs in place just in case we decide to stop him from going into Taiwan. Are we about to go to war with China as well?
Why would she know?
Well, it's the reason why Ukraine needs to win. There's no one that wants America and the West to help Ukraine more than the Taiwanese, because they know that if the Ukrainians defeat Russia, then China won't go into Taiwan. That's why a win for Russia is a win for China, and everybody needs to remember that. When it comes to China,
this lady's a little nutty, or is it just me?
Whether it's buying up our land, whether it's buying the largest pork producer in the country, stealing our intellectual property, all of those things. But they've killed more Americans with fentanyl than the Iraqis Iraq, Afghanistan, and Vietnam wars combined. They know exactly what they're doing. They're doing this with the spy center in Cuba. They're doing it with police centers around our country. They're doing it with Chinese coming in. They're doing it with the fact that 90% of our law enforcement drones are Chinese. So if you got upset with the Chinese spy balloon, think about all these mini spy balloons. We need to start being strong with China and make sure they know that we're on to them. Republican and Democrat presidents for too long thought that if they were nice to China, that China would want to be like us. That's narcissistic. China doesn't want to be like us. They want to be a communist China.
Yeah, ridiculous that the U.S. would be buying drones and things like that from China. I mean, it's just so absurd. Nikki Haley, Ambassador, it's wonderful to have you this morning. We'll be watching you next week. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Go to NikkiHaley.com and join our fight.
You got it. You can watch the second Republican debate right here on Fox Business, September 27th, moderated by our own Stuart Varney of Fox News' Dana Perino and Univision's Ilya Calderon. We'll be right back.
I don't even know if that's what he wants, dude. Honestly, fucking, I can't do it anymore. So maybe that'll help make it go away. He's like over 12.6 pounds now. He just keeps gaining weight. He's getting fatter and fatter. Whatever. That's what he wants. Do whatever you want, buddy. It's your world. I'm just passing through. Looks like this is about as dead as Twitch, so I'm gonna take off, y'all. Take it easy. Bye.